Chapter 501, Another World. Squeak squeak, but, the little gold mouse was slightly unhappy, and she said via voice transmission, Big Brother Ling Tian, if you can't go out, then wouldn't it mean that I wouldn't have meat to eat? You little fellow, all you know how to do is eat. Don't worry, I'll let you eat your fill when we go out once a month. Duan Ling Tian said in a slightly vexed tone. The middle-aged man only glanced in surprise at the little gold mouse when he heard her cry, then he turned around and continued heading forward. Whereas Jifeng and Sima Yong looked at the little gold mouse with gazes that contained slight terror. Although the little gold mouse didn't display her strength before them, but just the surplus might of her sharp cry was able to make their slave beasts become uneasy and restless. They could imagine that this was absolutely not an ordinary pet mouse. It was very likely a demon beast. All along the way, Duan Ling Tian noticed that he almost didn't see any buildings in this Dragon and Phoenix Academy, and it was completely empty. In next to no time, Duan Ling Tian arrived at a place full of holes in the ground under the lead of the middle-aged man. There was stagnant water all around this place, and many areas even had trash that emitted a pungent stench tossed about, and it was unbearable. So stinky. Sima Yong couldn't help but stretch his hand out to pinch his nose, and his expression was slightly unsightly. Originally, as far as she was concerned, the Dragon and Phoenix Academy was an academy established by the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family after all, and even if it was established in a hurry, the environment within it ought to be not bad. But the facts proved that his thoughts were mistaken, absolutely mistaken. Duan Ling Tian's sharp gaze noticed with a glance that there were many tattered tents scattered all around the holy ground. These tents were covered with tears and were extremely tattered, and if it was a rainy day, these tents would be simply unable to keep out the wind and rain. Moreover, there were many people standing and looking at these tents, and these people were mostly young men and a few young women. All of them had a similarity: they weren't over 35 years of age from their appearance. This wouldn't be that place the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's students stayed, right? A bad premonition arose in Duan Ling Tian's heart. Meanwhile, Jifeng and Sima Yong wrapped their heads around it, and their faces became grim. They were young masters of great clans that were born with golden spoons in their mouths. When had they stayed in such an environment? Asking them to stay in such a lousy place was simply torturing them. In the future, this place is your residence, all of you can casually pick a tent. The middle-aged man turned around and glanced indifferently at Duan Ling Tian's group of three before turning around and leaving behind Duan Ling Tian's group of three, who looked at each other in bewilderment. We have to stay in this lousy place for a year. The corners of Sima Yang's mouth twitched, his brows tightly frowned, and his expression was unsightly to the extreme. Jifeng's expression was unsightly as well. Only Duan Ling Tian had a calm expression, as the conditions here weren't too bad to him. As a mercenary and member of the special forces in his previous life, he'd frequently faced various disgusting environments, and there were even many places that were 100 or 1,000 times more disgusting than this place. So even if the conditions here were extremely bad, he didn't complain. Only by suffering through the bitterest of the bitter could one become the best of the best. Newcomers. Right at this moment, a slightly hoarse voice sounded out from afar. Duan Ling Tian's ground of three looked over towards where the voice came from. With just a glance they noticed that there was a building that was like a water tower standing far away from the holy ground, and there was an exquisite small house atop it. Compared to this towering exquisite house, the tattered tents on the holy ground simply seemed like a residence for beggars. For a time, Jifeng and Sima Yang's eyes both went red as they stared fixedly at the exquisite house that stood towering there. Although this house was far inferior to the houses in their home, but compared to the tattered tent, it was simply heaven. Only Duan Ling Tian's gaze descended onto the figure that stood before the exquisite house. This was an old man who wore gray clothes, his face was stiff and a trace of fierceness was revealed from between his brows. I'm the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's Vice Dean, Kai Ming, all of you can call me Vice Dean Kai. The gray-clothed old man spoke indifferently. Vice Dean Kai. Duan Ling Tian's group of three were shocked when they heard that the old man was actually the Vice Dean of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy, and they hurriedly paid their respects. Jifeng and Sima Yong both bowed to the old man, and as for Duan Ling Tian, he only nodded. This scene caused the old man to take a few extra glances at Duan Ling Tian. Since all of you have entered the Dragon and Phoenix Academy, then you must abide by the rules of the academy. The old man glanced indifferently at Duan Ling Tian's group of three and he said slowly, I presume that when all of you came here, There'd already been someone that told all of you that you must abide by the rules of the academy during this year. Now, I'll tell all of you the other 2 rules. As he spoke up to hear, the originally muddy eyes of the old man abruptly became fierce, and he said in a deep voice. Firstly, in our Dragon and Phoenix Academy, different people get different treatment. These tents around all of you are the residences the academy has allocated to all of you now, and you can't change your residences arbitrarily. Otherwise, the academy will expel all of you. Not allowed to change the residences arbitrarily. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he was able to understand the meaning within the old man's words. If this rule wasn't present, then after the students of the academy stayed here for a period of time, they would surely impatiently want to leave the academy to purchase various things outside to improve their living conditions. After all, the people that were able to be recommended to the academy were all young geniuses from all around the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. These people were all favored disciples in the powers they were from. When had they suffered such hardships? Whereas now, under this rule, it had dispersed everyone's thoughts of improving their living conditions. Jifeng and Sima Yang looked each other in the eye and laughed bitterly when they heard the old man. A similar thought had emerged in their minds earlier, but unexpectedly, it was directly denied by the academy's rules. What Shishtai rules? The 2 of them couldn't help but scold in their hearts. Vice Dean Kai, what do you mean by different people get different treatment? Duan Lingtian asked. You'll find out about this shortly, the old man didn't explain, then continued. The second rule, students of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy can fight each other, but are not allowed to harm another's life, or even cripple one another. Otherwise, the person will be expelled as well. This was something that didn't come as a surprise to Duan Lingtian. The Dragon and Phoenix Academy has the responsibility to protect the safety of all the young geniuses that were recommended into the academy. Now, all of you can go find an empty tent to stay in. The old man paid no attention to Duan Lingtian's group of 3 after he finished speaking. Duan Lingtian shook his head and was the first to leave and go look for an unoccupied tent. Presently, the remaining pile of tents were even more tattered than the others. The good tents had already been selected by others. I really don't know what the imperial family is thinking, making such a lousy place for us. If they lack money, I'm fully able to cover the expenses for an independent courtyard by myself. Sima Yang's tone was filled with complaint. I presume that there's an ulterior motive behind all this. Jifeng frowned and guessed. What ulterior motive could there be? Sima Yang grunted. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 had found their own tents, and the 3 tents weren't far away from each other. The tent was extremely small, and when they opened the tent, they were able to see the large amounts of cockroach excrements within it. It caused one to be disgusted and unable to accept it just from its looks. FK, what the FK is this place? People can stay here. Sima Yang, who'd just stretched out his hand to open the tent, became gloomy and he once again closed up the tent. Meanwhile, many people had come over, and then they chose the tents that belonged to them. The expressions of these people weren't sightly, and many of them even couldn't refrain from grumbling. Time to eat, a sonorous voice suddenly sounded out. It was a middle-aged man that was walking over with large strides while carried a few large trays, and atop these trays was some rice that was so sparse that one couldn't see any rice on the tray, and a moldy manto. A bowl of rice soup and a manto. Duan Lingtian received his own food and had an astonished expression. How would he cultivate when he wouldn't be full from eating this? I endured staying in this type of shishtai place, but can these things even be eaten? Sima Yang, who had an unsightly expression, had finally exploded, and with a raise of his hand, he tossed his food onto the ground. Jifeng frowned as well. When had he eaten food like this since he was young? Although Duan Lingtian felt it to be unbelievable, he didn't think anything was wrong with it. Perhaps this was the academy's way of giving them experience. Right when Duan Lingtian intended to bite the manto and drink the rice soup, another few middle-aged men appeared before the eyes of Duan Lingtian and the others, and these middle-aged men had come to deliver food as well. But, the trays on their hands were instead filled with fragrant rice and various mouthwatering good wine and delicacies. HMPH, eating these is just about right. The expressions of Sima Yang and Jifeng both eased up. But they were quickly stunned. They saw the middle-aged man that held these sumptuous dishes directly walk past their area and walk further in the academy. At that place was a large gate that led to another area. These dishes aren't for us. Sima Yang's face was gloomy, then his figure flashed out to stop one of the middle-aged men that carried the fine wine and delicacies, and he said in a deep voice. What is the meaning of this? Giving us rice soup and moldy mantos, yet others get fine wine and delicacies. HMPH. The middle-aged man glanced indifferently at Sima Yang. If you have the ability, then all of you can go replace them. So long as all of you enter the inner hall, you'll naturally be able to enjoy similar treatment. As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man paid no further attention to Sima Yang, and he passed through the gate to enter into the other area. Inner hall. The middle-aged man's words caused the group of young geniuses including Sima Yang, Ji Feng, and Duan Lingtian to have bewildered expressions. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian and the others couldn't help but follow up to the middle-aged man. Behind the gate, what appeared before the eyes of Duan Lingtian and the others was virtually another world. 501 Chapter 502, Chai Jin. Presently, a luxurious area paved with limestone had appeared before the eyes of Duan Lingtian and the others. This area was paved with limestones 10 wide with luxurious courtyards standing there, and every courtyard had a spacious house. The lawn outside the house was planted full of plants and flowers, and birds sung as the fragrance of flowers suffused the air. Compared to the area that Duan Lingtian and the others were currently at, this area was virtually like another world. Along with the entrance of the middle-aged men sending the food, young geniuses successively walked out of each of the 10 courtyards, then they received the fine wine and delicacies before returning to their courtyards to start feasting. Isn't the person within that courtyard the crazy young master, Luo Zan? Suddenly, an exclaim of surprise sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ear. Crazy young master. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. Although he'd never seen this crazy young master in the past, Duan Lingtian had heard of him long ago. Crazy young master was in the lead of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and in terms of strength and natural talent, he was the best amongst the 5 great young masters. Luo Zan, Sima Yang and Ji Feng who were beside Duan Lingtian had successively recognized the crazy young master, Luo Zan, as well. Not only that, they recognized quite a few of the young geniuses that occupied the other 9 courtyards. What's going on? Why is their treatment so good, yet ours is so bad? Sima Yang had a gloomy expression and his voice was exceedingly cold. Perhaps, this is what Vice Dean Kai meant earlier, different people enjoy different treatment. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he spoke slowly. The nearby Ji Feng couldn't help but nod as he agreed with Duan Lingtian's words. Exactly. All of us that are recommended to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy will be brought to the outer hall to stay on the grounds with stinking air, to sleep in the torn and tattered tents, and to eat the moldy mantos and rice soup which rice can't be found within, whereas if we want to change our current circumstance, then there's only one way, and that is to enter the inner hall. An outer hall young genius walked over, and after he'd successfully attracted the gazes of Duan Lingtian and the others, he continued. All of you have seen it, the treatment in the inner hall is completely different to our outer hall. In the inner hall, not only would you have the best living conditions, but even every meal would consist of fine wine and delicacies. Moreover, there's only one way to enter the inner hall and stay in these luxurious courtyards, and that is to defeat a young genius from the inner hall and replace him. In this way, the person that wins the challenge against the young genius would be able to obtain the treatment given previously to the person he'd defeated, and would be able to stay in a comfortable and luxurious house and eat the best fine wine and delicacies. This young genius from the outer hall finished speaking in one go. He had an expression of envy as he spoke. In this way, then if a person that is unable to stay within the inner hall after a year, then even if the competition between geniuses begins, it would practically be impossible for the person to obtain the qualifications to head to the Darkstone Empire's imperial city and approach the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Suddenly, someone spoke out. It can be put that way. The outer hall young geniuses from before nodded, then his eyes lit up. So, I've given myself a goal right now. I must work hard to break through during this year and strive to win a place in the inner hall. Presently, the weakest people in the inner hall are all existences at the 9th level of the nascent soul stage or above. And this is because not everyone had arrived. All the young geniuses that were recommended by the various powers of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom will gather here in the next few days. At that time, a person without a cultivation at the half-step void stage or above will probably find it difficult to obtain a footing in the inner hall. When they heard this, the people beside Duan Lingtian, including Ji Feng and Sima Yang, had serious expressions, and they all deeply agreed with what the former had said. So to say, so long as I'm able to defeat any one of them, I'll be able to replace them and stay within their courtyards and enjoy the fine wine and delicacies they're enjoying now. Sima Yang's eyes lit up and his figure flashed to charge towards the gate before entering the area of the inner hall. He intended to directly initiate a challenge and replace one of the young geniuses in the inner hall. You're not allowed to issue a challenge during mealtime and sleeping time. Right at this moment, a powerful voice sounded out from behind everyone, and at the same time, it entered into Sima Yang's ears, causing Sima Yang to be unable to help but stop in his tracks. It was precisely the voice of the Vice Dean, Kai Ming. Presently, Kai Ming stood outside the exquisite house that was like a watchtower, and his sharp gaze captured the sights of everything within the inner hall and outer hall. Looks like to a certain extent, the Vice Dean is staying here for the sake of monitoring everything in the inner hall and outer hall. If anyone dares break the rules, the person would probably be dragged out in a short moment. Duan Lingtian looked at the old man as he thought in his heart. HMPH. Then I'll wait for them to finish eating. Sima Yang withdrew himself. Meanwhile, when the group of outer hall young geniuses heard someone wanted to challenge the young geniuses of the inner hall, they all finished eating the rice soup and moldy mantos in their hands before leaving their tents and walking over to watch the show. Bang! A clear sound of shattering sounded out. It was the sound of a bowl full of rice soup being tossed to the ground, and a moldy manto was tossed down with it. For a time, the gazes of everyone in the outer hall shot at Duan Lingtian. It was precisely Duan Lingtian who tossed away the rice soup and moldy manto. I originally thought that everyone received the same treatment, but now it would seem like it isn't so. Since it's like this, then there's no need for me to eat these things. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and his sharp gaze shot at the inner hall. Bang! Right at this moment, Sima Yang tossed the rice soup and moldy manto in his hand onto the ground, then he fiercely stomped on them. I'm not f-king eating this sh*t. I want to drink fine wine and eat delicacies. Me too. Ji Feng shook his head and smiled, then he tossed away the rice soup and manto in his hand. This caused the group of young geniuses in the outer hall to sigh. So it's the Ji clan's Ji Feng and the Sima clan's Sima Yang, no wonder they're so confident and dare to directly toss away the rice soup and manto. Ji Feng, Sima Yang, they're the figures in our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that possessed a natural talent only inferior to the 5 great young masters. Exactly, it's precisely them. I presume it isn't difficult for them to occupy a place in the inner hall with their strengths. Some young geniuses of the outer hall recognized Ji Feng and Sima Yang, and they all sighed with emotion. I'm not surprised that Ji Feng and Sima Yang are confident, but this violet-clothed young man was the first to toss away the rice soup and manto, and he seems to be extremely confident. This young man looks to be not more than 25 years old. Even if he has taken good care of his appearance, he ought to not be older than 30. I never heard that such a figure existed in the younger generation of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. HMPH. He has already tossed away the rice soup and manto. If he's unable to enter the inner hall, then he'll have to go hungry. Many young geniuses of the outer hall couldn't help but shake their heads, and they didn't look favorably upon Duan Lingtian. These people were all young geniuses that had entered the academy early in the beginning. Presently, there were many people present that had entered the academy today, and they all had expressions of disdain when they heard this. These people are actually looking down on Duan Lingtian. Now, they slightly anticipated how surprised these people would be when they witnessed Duan Lingtian's strength and found out of Duan Lingtian's identity. They tacitly kept quiet about Duan Lingtian's identity and didn't refute these people, because they knew that there was no need for them to refute, as Duan Lingtian would use his actions to prove everything. At this moment, even Ji Feng and Sima Yang tacitly kept Duan Lingtian's identity a secret, as they obviously had almost similar thoughts. These fellows eat so slowly. Sima Yang frowned and he had an impatient expression. Looking at others drinking fine wine and savoring delicacies, whereas he himself stood here with a hungry stomach was a feeling that was extremely displeasing. Finally, amongst the 10 inner hall courtyards, a young man that was a little over 30 years old was the first to finish cleaning up his fine wine and delicacies. Then he stood up and his gaze of ridicule descended onto the group of people that Duan Lingtian was in, and he grinned. Is there anyone that wants to challenge me, Chai Jin? Chai Jin. Duan Lingtian noticed that as soon as the young man spoke, the faces of Ji Feng, Sima Yang, and many of the outer hall young geniuses had shocked expressions. Those young geniuses that weren't shocked were the young geniuses that had entered into the academy since a long time ago, and the reason they weren't surprised was because they knew of Chai Jin's existence since long ago. Chai Jin, when he saw that even Jifeng and Sima Yong lost their composures like this, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force swept out under his curiosity, and it enveloped Chai Jin. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian found out the reason why the expressions of Jifeng and the others were filled with shock. This Chai Jin actually is a first-level void-prying stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. A first-level void-prying stage martial artist that was a little over 30. Such natural talent was able to be compared with figures like the 5 great young masters. It's Chai Jin, the #1 genius of the Black Fiend sect. Supposedly, this Chai Jin rose abruptly in the Black Fiend sect in the recent years, and he used to be completely unknown in the past. In terms of natural talent, he's even not inferior to any one of the 5 great young masters of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Allegedly, Chai Jin had already broken through to the first level of the void-prying stage half a year ago. The crowd of Outer Hall disciples discussed animatedly. When these discussions entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, it caused Duan Lingtian's face to become gloomy. Black Fiend sect, he wouldn't forget this sect in his entire lifetime. The Black Fiend sect, the sect that had once annihilated the Boundless sect. There wasn't any connection between Duan Lingtian and the Boundless sect, and Duan Lingtian didn't care about the Boundless sect being annihilated by the Black Fiend sect. What Duan Lingtian really cared about was the scenes of having his dignity being trampled on by the Black Fiend sect's elder in the misty forest outside Aurora City. He wouldn't be able to forget everything that happened that day for his entire lifetime. He still remembered that the Black Fiend sect elders was called Sun Rui. Sima, weren't you complaining that they ate so slowly? Now that someone has finished eating, do you want to challenge him? Jifeng looked at Sima Yong, and his eyes narrowed as he smiled. Sima Yong rolled his eyes at Jifeng. If you're able, then go ahead. If I go up against him while being fully aware that he's a martial artist at the first level of the void-prying stage, then wouldn't I be looking for a beating? I challenge you. A cold and low shout suddenly sounded out. 502 Chapter 503, Sword Young Master's Comprehension Ability. Along with the cold and low shout sounding out, everyone present including Duan Lingtian looked towards the person that spoke. This was a young man in white robes, his face was like a jade sculpture with starry eyes and sword-shaped brows, and he possessed a graceful bearing. The most attention-catching was the sheathed sword he carried on his back. After all, none of the young geniuses present wouldn't possess a spatial ring, so very few people kept their weapons outside. Whereas this white-robed young man didn't look like someone who couldn't afford a spatial ring, no matter how one looked at him. Sword Young Master. Right when Duan Lingtian was still wondering about this person's identity, a sudden voice sounded out and caused Duan Lingtian to be as if awakened from a dream. Sword Young Master. The person who's ranked number 4 in the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. A member of the Origin Convergence sect. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian recalled the other identity of this Sword Young Master, and his face couldn't help but sink. The Origin Convergence sect had now combined itself with the other 2 great sects to form the Azure Forest Tri-sect, and although it ceased to exist except in name, the sect still existed. Most importantly, when the 7-star sword sect was annihilated that day, the Origin Convergence sect occupied a foremost position and was the biggest enemy of the 7-star sword sect. I never expectedly that the Sword Young Master had come as well. The appearance of the Sword Young Master had successfully raised the atmosphere of the scene, and some Outer Hall students even looked at Sword Young Master in adoration. Sword Young Master, Chen Xiao Shuai. One of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Many years ago, he'd spread his name throughout the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom with a single sword in his hands, and he was publicly acknowledged as an outstanding talent in the younger generation of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. First level void-prying stage. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out and discovered Sword Young Master's cultivation at the first possible moment, and he couldn't help himself from being slightly surprised. With a slight thought, he came to an understanding. Although this Sword Young Master's ranking amongst the 5 great young masters was below the Zither Young Master, the Zither Young Master had already stepped into the half-step void stage more than 1 year ago. So this Sword Young Master's cultivation stepping into the void-prying stage now wasn't surprising. Perhaps, it was because of the hostile relationship between the 7-star sword sect and the Origin Convergence sect. Slight hostility faintly emerged from Duan Lingtian towards this Sword Young Master. Suddenly, seeming to have noticed the hostility of Duan Lingtian, the Sword Young Master's gaze shot at Duan Lingtian. I saw you at the gate to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy earlier. You're the 7-star sword sect's Duan Ling Tian. If you're dissatisfied with me because of the Origin Convergence sect, then you don't have to be so. An indifferent voice transmission entered into Duan Ling Tian's ears in a timely manner. Presently, the Origin Convergence sect doesn't exist any longer, and I'm not an Origin Convergence sect disciple any longer. The Origin Convergence sect doesn't exist any longer. Duan Ling Tian was able to discern that this voice transmission was precisely that Sword Young Master. Duan Ling Tian frowned when he heard Sword Young Master, and he couldn't refrain from asking via voice transmission. What do you mean by this? All those years ago, I was cheated into the Origin Convergence sect by an old fellow. I'd once promised him that I'd be an Origin Convergence sect disciple for my entire lifetime. But, now that the Origin Convergence sect doesn't exist any longer, my promise from that time is naturally invalid. At the beginning of his voice transmission, the Sword Young Master slightly gnashed his teeth, but as he finished speaking, there was slight freedom within it. It was as if the Origin Convergence sect not existing any longer was a good thing to him. He's recovered his freedom. It's of no concern to me if you're an Origin Convergence sect disciple or not. I only know that if you dare obstruct me when I'm taking revenge on that Azure Forest Tri-sect for the 7-star sword sect, then you'll be the enemy of Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian glanced deeply at Sword Young Master, and his tone was terrifyingly calm. Sword Young Master's figure jerked when he heard this, and he glanced deeply at Duan Ling Tian as a composed smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Then he said via voice transmission. The rise and fall of the Azure Forest Tri-sect isn't related to me in the slightest. Besides that, I wouldn't go so far as to bring trouble for myself. The biggest mistake that Azure Forest Tri-sect did when annihilating the 7-star sword sect was perhaps allowing you to escape. The Sword Young Master's words possessed great admiration towards Duan Ling Tian, and he seemed to be confident that Duan Ling Tian had the ability to take revenge for the 7-star sword sect. This caused Duan Ling Tian to be rather surprised. Sword Young Master. Sword Young Master, Sword Young Master walked over slowly. The outer hall students that blocked the way towards the inner hall had all moved open to make a path, and many even greeted him humbly. Jifeng and Sima Yong looked silently at the Sword Young Master, and their eyes contained slight terror mixed within. Although they were well renowned in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, they were greatly inferior compared to the Sword Young Master, who was a figure amongst the 5 great young masters. Even to a certain extent, they were completely suppressed by the 5 great young masters in every aspect, and they were suppressed to the point they couldn't catch their breaths. Sword Young Master passed through the gate and entered the inner hall. Whereas now, the Black Fiend sect genius disciple, Chai Jin, who was inside the inner hall slowly walked out, and he looked at Sword Young Master with eyes filled with battle intent. I heard long ago that Sword Young Master is the only sword cultivator amongst the 5 great young masters. Today, Chai Jin wants to properly experience if you, Sword Young Master, are worthy of your reputation. Make your move. I haven't eaten yet. Sword Young Master had a calm gaze as he spoke slightly impatiently. Sword Young Master's words caused the corners of the mouths of the surrounding spectating outer hall students to be unable to refrain from twitching. They were naturally able to discern the meaning within Sword Young Master's words. It was none other than firmly believing that Chai Jin would suffer defeat at his hand, whereas he would replace Chai Jin and make the Dragon and Phoenix Academy prepare fine wine and delicacies for him. This was the treatment for an inner hall student of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Looks like Sword Young Master is extremely confident of yourself. Chai Jin's face sank when he heard Sword Young Master, and with a raise of his hand, a 3-foot-long blade appeared. Since it's like that, then let me experience the ability of Sword Young Master. As soon as he finished speaking, Chai Jin moved. Swoosh! Chai Jin's figure shook before seeming to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that flashed straight towards Sword Young Master. In the sky, 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. Swish! Origin energy raged on the 3-foot-long blade in Chai Jin's hand, and a sword light tore through the sky before transforming into scattered inch-long all-pervasive radiances that enveloped Sword Young Master and descended. Right at this moment, another 760 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the existing 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes. Obviously, the 3-foot-long blade in Chai Jin's hand was a grade 6 spirit sword. The might of his strike contained the strength of 2,760 ancient mammoths. The Black Fiend sect Starpoint sword technique. Not bad, but unfortunately, you haven't comprehended sword force, and it's difficult for you to ascend greatness in the end. Sword Young Master spoke with a calm expression when he saw Chai Jin's sword flashing over. The instant he spoke, Sword Young Master stood on the spot without moving, yet with a raise of his hand, the spirit sword on his back was immediately unsheathed. In the sky, 2,760 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared similarly. Swoosh! In the next moment, the Sword Young Master's sword was swift like a bolt of lightning as it pierced out, and he even didn't use a sword skill, only purely using the basic sword move of stabbing. "You're courting death." Chai Jin's expression was unsightly to the extreme when being looked down upon by Sword Young Master, and the speed of the sword in his hand became even swifter. Swish, 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 the scattered inch-long radiances were like a descending array of stars that covered the sky, and it formed a heaven-encompassing net that enveloped towards Sword Young Master. Sword Young Master's gaze was calm, and the origin energy on his sword that flashed out swiftly suddenly trembled. In the next moment, a peerlessly fierce aura emerged from within the origin energy, then it suffused out to rage and leap about on his sword. At the same time, another 500 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the existing 2,760 ancient mammoth silhouettes above Sword Young Master. Instantly, 3,260 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed out. Half-step advanced sword force. Duan Lingtian was the first to react. His expression became serious as his heart shook, and his eyes contained slight shock mixed within. Comprehending half-step advanced sword force at the first level of the void-prying stage. This comprehension ability was shocking. Whereas at almost the exact same instant that Duan Lingtian reacted, the surprised exclaim of the Vice Dean, Kai Ming, who stood outside the exquisite house sounded out in a timely manner. Half-step advanced sword force. Kai Ming's voice wasn't intentionally suppressed, and for a time, it caused the group of outer hall students to be as if being awakened from a dream. Half-step advanced sword force. Right when the group of outer hall students looked at each other. Swish! The sword in Sword Young Master's hand seemed as if it was assisted by the gods, and at this instant, it seemed as if it had transformed into a stroke of the gods as it stabbed towards the hand Chai Jin held his sword with. Clang! In the next moment, the sound of iron weapons colliding sounded out. Subsequently, everyone noticed Chai Jin's palm split open, causing fresh blood to drip down, and the Grade 6 spirit sword in his hand flew out to fiercely drop onto the ground. It was a good battle. Sword Young Master put away his sword and stood there, then he nodded indifferently to Chai Jin before looking towards the few nearby middle-aged men that were the personnel in the academy. "Go prepare food for me." One of the middle-aged men nodded and walked out with large strides, and he hurriedly went to prepare the food. Whereas Sword Young Master turned around to enter the courtyard that originally belonged to Chai Jin after nodding to Duan Lingtian. He'd defeated the inner hall student, Chai Jin, and kicked Chai Jin out of the inner hall. Whereas Chai Jin was demoted to an outer hall student. If he wanted to become an inner hall student again, then he could only issue a challenge once again. But at this moment, Chai Jin obviously didn't have the thought of challenging anyone for now, and he still stood dumbstruck on the spot. The strength of Sword Young Master gave him too great of a shock. First level void prying stage, half-step advanced sword force. This comprehension ability was sufficient to outshine all the other 5 great young masters. I truly never imagined that Sword Young Master has actually comprehended half-step sword force. Comprehending such a sword force with such a cultivation, amongst the 5 great young masters, I'm afraid Sword Young Master's comprehension ability can be considered to be first-rate. Even if it's crazy young master, Luo Zan, who's ranked at the top of the 5 great young masters, he'd only comprehended elementary fire force. The group of outer hall students couldn't refrain from exclaiming in surprise. Even if it was some of the other inner hall students, they now had faces full of shock. "You've all finished eating." Sima Yang quickly recovered from his shock, then he directly walked into the inner hall and challenged one of the inner hall students. Sima Yang, the inner hall student recognized Sima Yang, and he knew that he wasn't Sima Yang's match, so he directly admitted defeat. Sima Yang smiled in satisfaction, then he looked at the Dragon and Phoenix Academy worked and said, "Go prepare rich food for me." Subsequently, Ji Feng took a large stride forward and challenged an inner hall student. 503 Chapter 504, Amazing with a single brilliant feat. Needless to say, as a genius martial artist in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom with a natural talent only inferior to the 5 great young masters, Ji Feng was quite strong. The inner hall student that was selected by him was a 9th level nascent soul stage martial artist like him, and was defeated by him in 3 moves. Ji Feng smoothly entered into the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's inner hall to become an inner hall student. Ji Feng looked at the academy worker and said indifferently, "Prepare fine wine and delicacies for me." The latter nodded and left. After a short amount of time, 3 outer hall students had been successful in their challenges and replaced their opponents in the inner hall. It caused the surrounding crowd of inner hall students to feel their blood boil. Nice. At the same time the crowd of outer hall students sighed with emotion, they had expressions of jealousy and envy. In next to no time, the gazes of many people tacitly shot at Duan Lingtian. Obviously, they still hadn't forgotten the scene of Duan Lingtian being the first to toss away the rice soul and moldy manto. All of them wanted to know that if the young man that was so confident towards himself possessed the strength to enter the inner hall. Of course, there was also a portion of outer hall students that knew Duan Lingtian's identity, and they were filled with confidence towards him. After all, when they'd just arrived at the academy to register themselves today, they'd seen Duan Lingtian fight outside the academy gate with their own 2 eyes. Although it was only a glimpse, the finger move that Duan Lingtian dominatingly pointed out caused to be unable to forget it even until now. The gazes of more and more people descended onto Duan Lingtian. HMPH. This person was the first to toss away the food that belonged to the outer hall students earlier. He obviously possesses the confidence to defeat an inner hall student and enter the inner hall, yet I wonder if he has the courage to issue a challenge. If he doesn't dare issue a challenge, or even fails, he will become the joke of our outer hall. The way I see it, he's bound to become a joke. Exactly, no matter how monstrous he is, a young man that looks to absolutely not be older than 25 years old will surely be unable to defeat an inner hall student. Which of the inner hall students aren't existences at the 9th level of the nascent soul stage or above? The crowd of outer court students that didn't know of Duan Lingtian's ability whispered in discussion. However, every single word they spoke entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian didn't speak out to refute these people, because he knew that he could only use his actions to prove everything now, and only then would he be able to completely shut their mouths. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he took a stride forward. After a short moment, he'd entered the inner hall. After entering the inner hall, Duan Lingtian's gaze flashed past all the courtyards one by one. Within these courtyards, the strongest was the sword young master, Chen Xiaoshuai, and the crazy young master, Luo Zan. Sword young master was at the first level of the void prying stage. Crazy young master was at the second level of the void prying stage. The remaining people were mostly at the 9th level of the nascent soul stage, and a few were at the half-step void stage. Right when the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth slightly curved and he was prepared to casually choose a 9th level nascent soul stage inner hall student. HMPH. A fledgling kid wants to enter the inner hall. Truly a fool's dream. A voice that was irritating to the ear and was filled with ridicule entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian frowned as he turned around to look at the person that spoke. The person that ridiculed him now was precisely the Black Fiend sect's genius disciple, Chai Jin, that was still in a daze earlier. Now, Chai Jin had already taken care of the injuries on his hand. This little injury only required the consumption of some healing medicinal pills before it would heal in a short moment. Chai Jin, who'd just recovered, looked at Duan Lingtian with a gaze filled with ridicule. "What? Your current gaze seems like you don't agree. Idiot." Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at Chai Jin as he slowly spat out a word. Because of the Black Fiend sect's elder, Sun Rui, he didn't have a favorable impression of people from the Black Fiend sect. Now, he didn't go offend Chai Jin, yet Chai Jin had instead come offend him. Did Chai Jin really think that Duan Lingtian was a soft persimmon that was easy to bully? Idiot. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, Chai Jin was stunned, and for a time he thought that he'd heard mistakenly. Awesome. This outer hall student is awesome. He actually dared call Chai Jin an idiot. Exactly. Although this Chai Jin lost at the hands of the sword young master, he's in existence at the first level of the void prying stage, after all. In terms of strength, I'm afraid only sword young master and crazy young master are stronger than him amongst the 10 inner hall students. He even dares to offend a person like this. He's simply courting death. As expected, he's young and arrogant. We didn't have such boldness when we were around his age. Look, Chai Jin's expression is getting more and more unsightly. This young man is probably going to suffer. Many outer hall students watched the scene before them, and they pointed as they whispered in discussion. They seemed to have seen of this young man being completely destroyed by Chai Jin. Whereas those outer hall students that had seen Duan Lingtian fight outside the academy gate earlier instead had eyes that lit up. If Duan Lingtian and Chai Jin were to really battle each other, then the battle between two first-level void-prying stage martial artists would undoubtedly be extremely exciting. They anticipated it extremely. Presently, even the old man that stood outside the exquisite house, the vice dean of the academy, Kai Ming, looked at Duan Lingtian with a slightly bewildered gaze. This young man seems to be extremely confident. I wonder where he got this confidence from. You actually called me an idiot. Chai Jin finally confirmed what he'd heard was correct when he heard the discussions of the surrounding outer hall students. The violet-clothed young man before him has indeed called him an idiot earlier. He didn't hear it mistakenly. Instantly, his chest was almost completely filled with flames of rage that was difficult to restrain and would explode out at any moment. Not only do members of the Black Fiend sect have inferior strength, they even have problems with their ears. Duan Lingtian ridiculed. His words showed no mercy. Duan Lingtian's words once again caused the group of outer hall students to be muddled. Even if it was the group of inner hall students, all of them including Sword Young Master and Crazy Young Master had walked out of their courtyards. Amongst the 10 inner hall students, besides Sword Young Master, Ji Feng, and Sima Yang who had a calm expression and weren't surprised in the slightest, the others all revealed bewildered expressions and they felt that this violet-clothed young man was too arrogant. They knew clearly of Chai Jin's strength, and he was a real first-level void-prying stage martial artist. Even if he lost at the hands of Sword Young Master and was kicked out of the inner hall, so long as he casually challenged an inner hall student, he would be able to enter the inner hall once again and become an inner hall student once again. Kid, you're courting death. Chai Jin was enraged, completely enraged. At almost the instant he shouted out explosively, he'd moved, he didn't even pick up the grade 6 spirit sword that Sword Young Master hit to the ground earlier before directly flashing towards Duan Lingtian, and he seemed to have transformed into a gust of wind. If it was Sword Young Master or Crazy Young Master that said his strength was weak, then even if he was enraged, he could only endure and forcefully swallow it. But now, a little kid that looked to be not over 25 years old had actually dared to ridicule his strength being weak. How could he endure it? Whoosh! Chai Jin struck out with rage, slapping out with a large and unrestrained movement, and his palm crashed down towards Duan Lingtian. Origin energy roared on his palm as it descended, and it carried along the might to swallow mountains and rivers. River Swallowing Palm, a famous high-grade profound rank martial skill within the Black Fiend sect. This palm contained the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. Right when most of the people thought that Duan Lingtian was about to suffer, Duan Lingtian suddenly took a step forward before unexpectedly withdrawing his right hand and casually placing it horizontally before his chest. What does he want to do? Right when everyone was curious in their hearts, Duan Lingtian made his move. Swoosh! His right arm abruptly swung out like a raging python swinging its tail. Origin energy twined around his arm as it swung out with imposing might that shot into the sky like a rainbow. Duan Lingtian didn't use any martial skills when attacking. But even then, the instant Duan Lingtian attacked, the 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes that appeared in the sky still caused most of the people present to be dumbstruck. Void, first-level void-prying stage. Right when the hearts of these people trembled, as they felt something flash before their eyes. Subsequently, they saw that another 500 ancient mammoth silhouettes had appeared beside the existing 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes above the violet-clothed young man. What's going on? He's obviously not using a spirit weapon. At this moment, everyone including Sword Young Master and the group of students that had seen Duan Lingtian fight outside the academy gates trembled in their hearts for no reason. Half-step advanced lightning force. Where at almost the exact same instant, a surprise exclamation sounded out abruptly. It was precisely the surprised exclamation of the Vice Dean, Kai Ming, who'd lost his composure. As soon as Kai Ming finished speaking, bang, the arm which Duan Lingtian causally swung out and contained the origin energy of a first-level void-prying stage martial artist and half-step advanced lightning force, had finally collided with the palm of Chai Jin, whose face went pale and had a terrified expression. Kacha! Ah! The clear sound of bones breaking and Chai Jin's bitter and shrill cry sounded out at almost the exact same instant. Bang! Subsequently, another enormous bang sounded out. After Duan Lingtian's arm that seemed as if it was assisted by the gods had smashed onto Chai Jin's arm, it didn't reduce in momentum before blasting onto Chai Jin's chest and blasting Chai Jin flying. Bang! Chai Jin's body flew out like an arrow that had left the bow and fiercely collided on the wall at the side of the inner hall. Along with Chai Jin's body trembling, Chai Jin spat out a few mouthfuls of blood repeatedly as his body slid down from the wall, and atop the wall, hideous cracks that were like a spider web had appeared. Silence. Deathly silence. Presently, besides Chai Jin's muffled groans, only the cold and indifferent words of the young man who stood there like a god of war remained. Genius of the Black Fiend sect. Meh. The young man's words had no lack of intention to provoke and humiliate. But at this moment, no one said anything. This young man had used his formidable strength to prove that the Black Fiend sect disciple, Chai Jin, was useless. Duan Lingtian quickly withdrew his gaze from Chai Lin. Defeating Chai Jin was something out of his expectations. To him, it wasn't challenging at all. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed that at this moment, including Chai Jin, the gazes of everyone present had shot at him in unison. Besides viciousness, Chai Jin's gaze contained terror and uneasiness. The gazes of the other people were instead gazes of astonishment and surprise. 504 Chapter 505, He's Duan Lingtian. Meanwhile, a Dragon and Phoenix Academy worker left the inner hall with large strides and went to prepare fine wine and delicacies for Duan Lingtian. Domineeringly defeating Chai Jin with a cultivation at the first level of the void prying stage and half-step advanced lightning force, the scene from before had practically replicated the scene of Sword Young Master defeating Chai Jin. As far as the workers of the academy were concerned, the strength of this violet-clothed young man wasn't inferior to Sword Young Master. Even to the extent that because the violet-clothed young man had comprehended a force of nature, he might even surpass Sword Young Master in terms of strength. After all, although Sword Young Master's sword force was at the half-step advanced stage as well, but it could only be used on attacks. Whereas the violet-clothed young man's lightning force was able to be used in both attacks and movement techniques, thus affecting his speed and could be said to possess both speed and offense. If they really were to battle, Sword Young Master's chances of winning were extremely small, because Sword Young Master's speed was bound to be inferior to this violet-clothed young man. So although the violet-clothed young man hadn't officially challenged an inner hall student, he still obediently went to prepare fine wine and delicacies for the violet-clothed youth. Only because there was no suspense towards the violet-clothed youth becoming an inner hall student. Abnormal. The corners of Ji Feng's mouth twitched, and he felt the back of his heart go slightly cold. When he recalled how he almost offended this maleficent existence in the restaurant earlier today, he felt a slight lingering fear in his heart. Fortunately, he was sufficiently cautious. He was still concealing his strength when he was outside earlier. The Sword Young Master, Chen Xiaoshuai's, gaze was extremely complicated. Although after he witnessed Duan Lingtian's strength at the academy gates earlier, he didn't doubt in the slightest that Duan Lingtian was able to surpass him in the future, but that was only in the future. What he never expected was that there was utterly no need to wait until the future, as Duan Lingtian's current strength was already sufficient to stably defeat him. Half-step advanced lightning force. When he recalled the strands of faint violet-colored energy that leapt about on Duan Lingtian's raging origin energy when Duan Lingtian swung his arm out, Sword Young Master's heart couldn't help but experience a wave of shock. He originally thought that even if it was throughout the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, it would be difficult to find someone who had similarly been able to comprehend half-step advanced force at the first level of the void-prying stage like him. But when he saw Duan Lingtian execute half-step advanced lightning force, the self-satisfaction in his heart was completely gone. Besides him, there was still someone in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that was able to comprehend half-step advanced force at the first level of the void-prying stage. Moreover, the half-step advanced force that was comprehended was a force of nature. A force of nature possessed an advantage against a weapon force, as it possessed both offense and speed, and it was the best type of force. If the higher-ups of the Azure Forest Tri-Sect find out of the strength that Duan Lingtian revealed today, I'm afraid they will be unable to sleep peacefully and have no appetite to eat, Sword Young Master thought in his heart and silently mourned for the Azure Forest Tri-Sect. Abnormal. Sima Yong was unable to speak for a long time, and he finally spat out a word. Besides Ji Feng, Sword Young Master, and Sima Yong, the crazy young master, Luo Zan, was one of the few that were the first to recover from their shock. Luo Zan had an extremely complicated gaze as he looked at Duan Lingtian's proud and aloof figure. For the first time, bitterness that was difficult to speak about had arisen within his heart. What 5 great young masters? It's only a joke. Before this young man, all the 5 great young masters including him were nothing worth mentioning. Meanwhile, the remaining people had recovered from their shock as well. Whoosh! For a time, it was like a stone had caused 1,000 ripples. Abnormal. Too abnormal. Exactly. He's too abnormal. No wonder he was so confident and was the first to toss away the rice soup and manto that belonged to the outer hall students. So it turned out that he possesses such a terrifying strength. First level void prying stage and half-step advanced lightning force, his strength isn't inferior to Sword Young Master. How old is he? No matter how well he has taken care of his appearance, he's surely not older than Sword Young Master, right? Many outer hall students discussed animatedly. They were exceedingly astounded that Duan Lingtian was able to achieve such accomplishments at such a young age. HMPH. Take good care of his appearance. Let me tell all of you, his true age is no difference from how he looks. Exactly, he isn't even 25 this year. Take good care of his appearance. To think all of you were able to think of such a thing like this. Those students that had seen Duan Lingtian fight outside the academy gates earlier and knew of Duan Lingtian's background couldn't refrain from speaking out. What do all of you mean? Could it be that all of you know him? Instantly, the group of outer hall students that were ignorant asked curiously. Of course. Do all of you know who he is? Let me tell all of you. He is the person whose name has been spread and give rise to much discussion in our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the 7-star sword sect's genius disciple, Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, all of you ought to have heard of him, right? In next to no time, the group of outer hall students that knew of Duan Lingtian's background provided an explosive reveal. Instantly, the entire outer hall of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy was in a complete stir. He's that Duan Lingtian. Oh my god, so it's him. I was wondering why such a little freak would suddenly appear in our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, so it turns out he's the 7-star sword sect's genius disciple, Duan Lingtian. I heard long ago that the 7-star sword sect's genius disciple Duan Lingtian was a monstrous genius in the martial Dao that's unprecedented in the history of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Now that I've met him today, he really does deserve his reputation. The numerous burning gazes of the outer hall students had all descended onto Duan Lingtian, and none of them were stingy with their words of praise. He's Duan Lingtian. Besides Sword Young Master, Ji Feng, and Sima Yang, the gazes the other inner hall students shot at Duan Lingtian had completely changed. Duan Lingtian, especially Crazy Young Master, Luo Zan. He'd heard of Duan Lingtian long ago, and even knew that Duan Lingtian had once defeated Saber Young Master and Zither Young Master one after the other. Duan Lingtian had even been publicly acknowledged as the peerless genius that surpassed the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Not older than 25 years, yet possesses a cultivation at the first level of the void prying stage and has comprehended half-step advanced lightning force, Duan Lingtian has indeed surpassed the 5 of us. Crazy Young Master sighed in his heart. Of course, he didn't become discouraged because of this. His gaze became even fuller of desire. Duan Lingtian isn't a match for me right now. What I have to do now is continue forward and not allow him to catch up. Perhaps, even Duan Lingtian himself never imagined that he would actually make Crazy Young Master, who was ranked first amongst the 5 great young masters, feel pressure. Presently, Duan Lingtian had a carefree expression when facing the gazes of admiration of the group of outer hall students, and he remained unmoved. It was difficult for all of this to create a wave in his heart. So he's that Duan Lingtian, neither arrogant nor humble, he's indeed an exceptional genius. The old man that stood outside the exquisite house nodded in satisfaction, and the gaze he shot at Duan Lingtian was filled with smiles. Duan Lingtian's appearance in the Dragon and Phoenix Academy was undoubtedly a hugely pleasant surprise to him. If His Majesty knows that Duan Lingtian has come to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy and even possessed such a shocking strength, he will probably be interested in Duan Lingtian as well. The old man thought in his heart. Duan Lingtian, he's actually Duan Lingtian. Chai Jin gazed at Duan Lingtian's back and his heart shook. He suddenly felt that it wasn't injustice that he'd lost. After all, Duan Lingtian had defeated Zither Young Master, who was ranked 3rd amongst the 5 great young masters, more than a year ago. It wasn't surprising that Duan Lingtian had defeated him now. But when he recalled the humiliation Duan Lingtian gave him earlier, he couldn't help but reveal a sheen of ruthlessness in his eyes. Duan Lingtian, even if your strength is stronger than mine, the way the disciples of our Black Fiend sect do things doesn't completely rely on our strength. Don't allow me to find a chance, otherwise, I'll make you die a graveless death. Chai Jin's face was covered in icy cold killing intent. Although Duan Lingtian was currently standing with his back towards Chai Jin, as a weapons specialist that had walked through seas of blood and mountains of corpses, He had a special sense towards killing intent, and he sensed Chai Jin's killing intent at the first possible moment. Instantly, Duan Lingtian's gaze went cold. HMPH. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a wisp of an evil smile as killing intent emerged in his heart. If this Chai Jin still remains muddle-headed, then he's dead. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian walked over towards the group of inner hall students under the gaze of everyone present. Duan Lingtian is going to challenge the inner hall students already. The group of outer hall students seemed as if they'd discovered a new continent when they saw this scene. I hope he'll challenge Crazy Young Master or Sword Young Master. Yeah, if he battles Crazy Young Master or Sword Young Master, then it will surely be extremely brilliant. Many outer hall students had expressions of anticipation as they looked at Duan Lingtian. Whereas unlike the outer hall students, the hearts of those people whose strengths were at the bottom of the group of inner hall students started thumping when they saw Duan Lingtian walk over. If Duan Lingtian chose them, then they would probably have to leave the inner hall. Although they knew since long ago that this moment would arrive. After all, the young geniuses from everywhere around the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom would gather here within these few days, and there was no lack of people who had strengths that surpassed them. But when this moment really arrived, their hearts were still filled with unwillingness. Leaving the inner hall would mean that they would be degraded back to an outer hall student once again. Once they were degraded into an outer hall student, they wouldn't have a spacious courtyard to stay in and could only stay in those tattered tents. They wouldn't be able to enjoy fine wine and delicacies and could only eat rice soup and moldy mantos. They were unwilling to face this great drop. At this moment, they hoped so much that Duan Lingtian wouldn't choose them. Under the gazes of disappointment from the group of outer hall students, Duan Lingtian casually chose an inner hall student with a cultivation at the 9th level of the nascent soul stage. Although he didn't get angry, but he still has a bitter smile on his face when he was chosen by Duan Lingtian. He never imagined that he would be so unfortunate. Do you still want to battle me? Duan Lingtian looked at this inner hall student and he forced out a faint smile on his face. The inner hall student hurriedly shook his head. Then thank you. Duan Lingtian smiled amiably, and it caused this inner hall student to feel as if he was washed in a spring breeze. Subsequently, this inner hall student knew his limitations well and left the inner hall, then passed through the gate between the inner hall and outer hall before once again entering into the outer hall. But not a single people laughed at him. Everyone had seen Duan Lingtian's strength earlier, and it was something that an ordinary person was unable to reach. It wasn't shameful to admit defeat before Duan Lingtian. 505 Chapter 506, Grade 4 Flames. Duan Lingtian achieved his wish and lodged in the inner hall's courtyard. In next to no time, the 4 workers of the academy sent over fine wine and delicacies for Duan Lingtian, Sword Young Master, Ji Feng, and Sima Yang. The fine wine and delicacies had only just been carried in for Duan Lingtian. Squeak squeak, the little gold mouse who had fallen asleep before Duan Lingtian entered the inner hall smelt the fragrance and awoken at the first possible moment. Big brother Lingtian, where did you get this meat? Didn't they only give you a bowl of water and a lousy manto? The little gold mouse leapt down and directly helped Duan Lingtian start cleaning up, and it wasn't long before she'd already cleaned up more than half. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched and he couldn't help but scold with a smile on his face. You little fellow, you've only just awoken and you've seized my food. I took great pains to get all of this. Duan Lingtian shook his head before walking out of the courtyard, then he looked at the academy worker that stood outside. Big brother, can you help me prepare 2 portions of delicacies? The worker couldn't help but be stunned. So much isn't enough for you. There's nothing I can do about it, I have a glutton following by my side. Duan Lingtian looked slightly helplessly at the little gold mouse in the courtyard, and spread out his hands as he spoke. Meanwhile, the other workers looked over as well. I can't decide on this. The worker was in a slightly difficult position. According to our academy's rules, besides being able to request for a full meal when they've just arrived in the inner hall, we can only send food over to every inner hall student when it's meal time. There's such a rule. Duan Lingtian's face froze, then he raised his hand and withdrew a gold bill with a 1,000 denomination. Big brother, you. Duan Lingtian hadn't finished speaking when the worker's face went pale. Quickly put it away, if the vice dean were to see it. I've already see it. Right at this moment, an indifferent voice sounded out. Duan Lingtian raised his head to look towards the old man that stood outside the exquisite house. Vice Dean Kai, I. All right. The old man raised his hand to stop Duan Lingtian and said with a serious expression. It's also because I forgot to tell you, in our Dragon and Phoenix Academy, besides being prohibited from improving your living conditions, you're also prohibited from bribing the workers. Since it's your first time, I won't fuss about it this time. Duan Lingtian's heart couldn't help but jerk when he heard the first half of what the old man said, and Duan Lingtian only heaved a sigh of relief when he heard the old man finish speaking. Thank you, Vice Dean Kai. After he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian had a bitter smile on his face, and his heart was filled with helplessness. Alas, little gold, that glutton has actually eaten my food, looks like I can only go hungry for this meal. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian turned around, intending to return to his courtyard. Right at this moment, in the future, send him an extra 2 portions of fine wine and delicacies for every meal. The sudden voice entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to refrain from revealing a happy expression. Thank you, Vice Dean Kai. Duan Lingtian hurriedly turned around and thanked. The worked was slightly surprised when he heard Kai Ming, as he never expected that the Vice Dean would take care of Duan Lingtian so well. But with a quick thought, he quickly came to an understanding. This Duan Lingtian had an extraordinary natural talent in the martial Dao that was peerless. 1 year from now, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom would have to rely on him to show off on the stage of the Darkstone Empire. A person like this had sufficient qualification to obtain different treatment. Go and prepare 2 portions of fine wine and delicacies for him now. The old man instructed. Yes, Vice Dean, the worker replied and left. With the special allowance from the Vice Dean, Duan Lingtian finally had a full meal. After his meal, the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth couldn't help but twitch when he saw the little gold mouse that lay there with a stomach that had expanded to the point it become round. This little gold is truly a complete glutton. Out of the 3 portions, I was full after eating 1, whereas she ate an entire 2 portions. The little gold mouse lifted up her bloated body with difficulty, then blinked her jade green eyes as she said via voice transmission, Big Brother Lingtian, I like this place, the roast meat and grilled meat here is much tastier than the restaurants. Of course, the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family is standing behind this Dragon and Phoenix Academy. The chefs that prepare the delicacies for the inner hall are very likely the imperial chefs from the imperial palace. This was something that Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised of in the slightest. After eating his fill, Duan Lingtian returned to his room and cultivated silently. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Lightning Worm Form. The origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body was ceaselessly strengthening. What he needed to do now was to advance his cultivation as quickly as possible and make himself possess sufficient ability to look down upon the young geniuses from the various dynasties during the martial competition of the 10 dynasties that was to be held 4 years from now. After an unknown amount of time, Duan Lingtian felt the increase of his origin energy was almost saturated, and he stopped. Haste does not bring success. This principle was something Duan Lingtian knew of. But even if he didn't cultivate, Duan Lingtian still had many things to do. Hiss! With a raise of his hand, a strand of a raging and restless flame appeared on Duan Lingtian's hand. This was a strand of blue flames. If a weapons craftsman was here, then he would surely recognize with a glance that this was a grade 4 weapon flame. The grade 4 weapon flame that only a grade 4 weapons craftsman was able to condense. Exactly, the current Duan Lingtian was already a grade 4 weapons craftsman. Not to mention the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, even the Darkstone Empire didn't possess a grade 4 weapons craftsman. Only an extremely small number of grade 4 weapons craftsmen were present in the Darken dynasty. As for grade 3 alchemists, probably only the foreign lands where experts were numerous like the clouds would possess them. Alas, there are no materials in my possession that can advance the grade of offensive spirit weapons. It's temporarily impossible for me to advance the grade 5 spirit sword of mine and little gold to the 4th grade. Duan Lingtian shook his head and sighed, then he withdrew the cauldron he used for refining medicinal pills. This cauldron was advanced to the ranks of a grade 5 spirit weapon by Duan Lingtian previously. Now that my cultivation has broken through to the void prying stage, the pill fire and weapon flame condensed from my origin energy can all be condensed into a grade 4 flame. But if I want to refine grade 4 medicinal pills, I still require a cauldron that's a grade 4 spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto the cauldron. Fortunately, the materials required by an auxiliary spirit weapon like a cauldron isn't rare. There are sufficient materials amongst the materials I've collected to refine it into a grade 4 spirit weapon. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian withdrew a pile of weapons refining materials. After 1 hour, Duan Lingtian used a profound technique combined with his Grade 4 weapon flame to successfully advance the cauldron to the level of a Grade 4 spirit weapon. Big brother Lingtian, you're able to refine Grade 4 spirit weapons. Duan Lingtian's movements weren't soft, and it had alarmed the little gold mouse, causing the little gold mouse's eyes to light up. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. Squeak. The little gold mouse cried out happily when she heard this. Her jade green eyes were filled with happiness as she raised her little claw and withdrew her pocket-sized Grade 5 spirit sword from the spatial collar on her neck. Big brother Lingtian, quickly advance my spirit sword's grade. The little gold mouse was extremely excited as she spoke to Duan Lingtian via voice transmission. After she found out about the wide gap between every grade of the spirit sword, the little gold mouse was filled with yearning towards a high-grade spirit sword. She'd always been yearning for Duan Lingtian to be able to improve her Grade 5 spirit sword into a Grade 4 spirit sword in the past. Duan Lingtian laughed bitterly. Little gold, I temporarily don't have the materials that are able to improve offensive spirit weapons to become Grade 4 spirit weapons. We can only wait for when we have the chance to head to the Imperial City's Weapons Craftsman Guild to try our luck. The materials required for a Grade 4 offensive spirit weapon was much rarer than the material required for a Grade 4 auxiliary spirit weapon. At the same time, it was extremely valuable as well. In the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, it was absolutely not able to be found everywhere. The little gold mouse instantly drooped her head when she heard this, and she was slightly disappointed. Alright, come here, this is the 2 drops of Monkey King wine the first promised you. You ought to be able to break through to the 7th level of the void prying stage after consuming them. At that time, your spiritual force ought to be able to break through with your cultivation and improve. Duan Lingtian withdrew 2 drops of Monkey King wine and passed it to the little gold mouse. The little gold mouse's eyes lit up when she heard this, then swallowed the 2 drops of Monkey King wine into her stomach as she said via voice transmission, Big brother Lingtian, I'll surely be able to break through this time. Hee, so long as I break through to the 7th level of the void prying stage, my spiritual force will surely be pushed into the void initiation stage as well. At that time, I'll be able to awaken my soul brand and comprehend soul skills. As she finished speaking, the little gold mouse was extremely excited. Duan Lingtian nodded. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but smile bitterly when he saw the little gold mouse lie down and fall into deep sleep. That day, when the little gold mouse consumed the nether soul fruit, her spiritual force had increased by many levels. Now, along with the advancement of her cultivation, her spiritual force would advance appropriately. This was something that was different to Duan Lingtian. In the past, although Duan Lingtian's spiritual force was strong, it wasn't the contribution of spirit fruits, even to the extent that he'd never consumed spirit fruits that increased spiritual force. So, along with the advancement of his cultivation, this spiritual force had slowly conformed to his cultivation before finally being on the same level as his cultivation. Just like now, whereas the little gold mouse had consumed a spirit fruit that had truly developed the potential of her spiritual force. In the future, so long as her cultivation advanced, her spiritual force would obtain the corresponding advancement. Duan Lingtian extremely anticipated what sort of soul skill the little gold mouse's awakened soul brand would bestow upon her. Logically speaking, the soul brand inherited by a descendant of a jade-eyed heavenly mouse ought to not be simple. So long as little gold's spiritual force advances to the void initiation stage, then I don't have to be overcautious when I move about in the Imperial City in the future. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. When he saw that little gold wouldn't wake up in a short amount of time, Duan Lingtian left the room and arrived at the courtyard. Tempest Point. With a raise of his hand, wind force and lightning force appeared at the same time, and the Tempest Point tore apart the sky before descending onto the stone pillar in the courtyard and directly piercing through it. Duan Lingtian silently cultivated his Tempest Point, doing his best to comprehend an even higher level of wind force and lightning force. Whereas at this moment, all hell broke out outside the academy because of Duan Lingtian's appearance. Firstly, it was the Yin clan. Yin Jie, the #1 genius of the Yin clan's younger generation, the inheritor of the position of patriarch of the Yin clan, actually had an arm crippled by someone. His most important arm. It was instantly like an earthquake as the entire Yin clan shook. Yin clan estate. Many Yin clan higher-ups were gathered together within the audience hall. Presently, more and more people ceaselessly arrived outside the audience hall, and they were precisely the Yin clan higher-ups that had hurried over after receiving the news. 506. Chapter 507. A storm is brewing. In next to no time, the Yin clan higher-ups had gathered together. The Yin clan's patriarch, Yin Zheng, had an extremely gloomy expression. I presume all of you know the cause and effect of the matter. I've called everyone together mainly because of this matter, to seek the opinion of everyone and seek justice for Jay. The Jay that Yin Zheng spoke of was precisely Yin Jay. His own son, and his most outstanding son. Patriarch, Duan Lingtian is simply too audacious for daring to make a move against young Master Jay. I suggest that we head to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy and demand him right now. A curly-bearded man was filled with righteous indignation as he spoke in a sonorous voice. Exactly. A surviving trash of the 7-star sword sect actually dares to provoke our Yin clan. He's simply courting death. Many people agreed with the curly-bearded man's words. Grand Elder, what do you think? Yin Zheng's gaze descended onto the old man below him, and he spoke slightly respectfully. The old man had his eyes closed all along, and he only slowly opened his pair of muddy eyes when he heard Yin Zheng. It's best for our Yin clan to wait and see in this matter. Wait and see. Many people shook their heads and had unwilling expressions. Grand Elder, could it be that we should just let this matter go? Young Master Jay was the future hope of our Yin clan. Now that young Master Jay is crippled, if our Yin clan doesn't take any actions, others would think that our Yin clan is afraid of Duan Lingtian. Yeah, Grand Elder, the Yin clan's dignity prevails over everything else. For a time, the Yin clan's audience hall went into an uproar. Dignity prevails over everything else. The old man slowly lifted his head, and his pair of muddy eyes abruptly flashed with a strand of bright light. Are you sure the rise and fall of the clan is inferior to that illusory dignity? The clan's rise and fall. The old man's words caused most of the people present to be puzzled. Grand Elder, what do you mean by this? Of course, there were also many people that understood the meaning in the old man's words. Grand Elder, you're afraid of Duan Lingtian's natural talent. Yin Zheng took a deep breath before asking. The old man nodded and said slowly, I've just obtained news that Duan Lingtian is not only a first-level void-prying stage martial artist, but has even comprehended half-step advanced lightning force. All of you ought to know what this means. As soon as the old man finished speaking, the expressions of all the Yin clan higher-ups, including Yin Zheng, became gloomy. They'd heard of Duan Lingtian stepping into the first level of the void-prying stage, so they weren't surprised. But, half-step advanced lightning force. Yin Zheng felt his heartbeat suddenly quicken. Grand Elder, is what you said true? This matter is something that grandson of mine used his monthly chance to leave the academy and notify me of. The old man had a serious expression. Instantly, the others no longer doubted it. Even though the natural talent of the Grand Elder's grandson was inferior to the patriarch's son, Yin Jie, it wasn't bad, and he was one of the Yin clan disciples that were recommended into the Dragon and Phoenix Academy this time. Not yet 25 years of age, but possesses a cultivation at the first level of the void-prying stage and half-step advanced force. I originally thought that surviving trash of the 7-star sword sect only had monstrous natural talent, but I never imagined that his comprehension ability was so monstrous as well. The words of many Yin clan higher-ups were filled with fear. Grand Elder, could it be that we can only swallow the humiliation silently? There were also some Yin clan higher-ups that were exceedingly unwilling. Could it be that all of you have any brilliant ideas? The old man asked indifferently, causing the former to be at a loss of what to say. The old man continued, Duan Lingtian is a surviving trash of the 7-star sword sect, and is a person that the Azure Forest Tri-sect wishes for nothing more than to get rid of and celebrate after. Do all of you think that the Azure Forest Tri-sect will sit idly by once they know that Duan Lingtian has appeared? The old man's words caused the gazes of the Yin clan higher-ups to light up. The strength of the Azure Forest Tri-sect far surpasses our Yin clan. If the Azure Forest Tri-sect is helpless against Duan Lingtian, then do all of you think our Yin clan can do anything to that Duan Lingtian? Instead of taking a risk and offending a great enemy in the future, isn't it better to watch the tigers battle from the top of a mountain? The old man's words obtained the approval of everyone. Patriarch, I'm afraid there are already people who have spread the news of Duan Lingtian's appearance to the Azure Forest Tri-sect, but the person passing the message probably still doesn't know that Duan Lingtian has comprehended half-step advanced lightning force. The old man looked at Yin Zheng, and a strand of cold light flashed within his muddy eyes. Patriarch, send someone to notify the Azure Forest Tri-sect of the matter of Duan Lingtian having comprehended half-step advanced lightning force. Grand Elder is wise. Yin Zheng's eyes lit up when he heard this, as he'd guessed the old man's intentions. Grand Elder is wise. All the Yin clan higher-ups reacted to it and all their faces revealed evil smiles. If the Azure Forest Tri-sect found out that Duan Lingtian, who was a potential threat, had not only broken through to the first level of the void-prying stage, but had even comprehended half-step advanced lightning force, they would probably want to get rid of Duan Lingtian desperately. They didn't doubt this in the slightest. In next to no time, an enormous eagle soared into the sky from within the Yin clan estate, and it carried along a person as it transformed into a bolt of lightning that headed out of the imperial city. Based on its speed, this eagle was obviously a demon beast. The Azure Forest Tri-sect was a combination of the former Origin Convergence sect, Demonic Lotus Blade sect, and Snow Moon sect. Whereas the Snow Moon sect's location was the closest to the imperial city. The location of the former Snow Moon sect was situated at the north of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and it was a world of ice and snow, where snow gleamed white all year round. Today, this world of ice and snow had an unexpected guest. Swoosh! A black figure flashed past the horizon, and it was exceptionally conspicuous in this world of ice and snow. Before long, the black figure stopped and revealed its true form. It was a flying beast with an appearance of an eagle. The reason this demon beast had stopped was because a figure had appeared ahead and obstructed its path. Slight terror appeared in the sharp eyes of the demon beast when facing the middle-aged scholar with graceful bearing before it. Who's trespassing into the branch sect of my Azure Forest Tri-sect? The middle-aged man wore a silk headdress and held a feathered fan, and he had a calm expression, yet slightly cold lights flickered deep within his eyes. Greetings, sect leader Shui. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man that sat on the demon beast swiftly stood up and respectfully bowed to the middle-aged scholar. Who are you? The middle-aged scholar was precisely the former Snow Moon sect's leader, Shui Rui, and was also one of the three great sect leaders of the Azure Forest Tri-sect as of now. As a higher-up of the Yin clan, the middle-aged man had once seen Shui Rui, so he recognized Shui Rui. Sect leader Shui, I'm a member of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City's Yin clan. I've come here under the orders of the Patriarch to pass information to sect leader Shui. The middle-aged man spoke respectfully to Shui Rui. Yin clan, the Yin clan whose reserves and resources are sufficient to compare with a first-rate sect. Shui Rui's brows raised as he asked indifferently. Exactly. The middle-aged man nodded. Speak, what is it? Shui Rui didn't take the Yin clan seriously. As far as he was concerned, a clan that was comparable to a first-rate sect would have 2 weak void initiation stage martial artists in the clan, and it was difficult for them to be thought highly of. Not to mention comparing with the current Azure Forest Tri-sect, even if it was the former Snow Moon sect, it still wasn't something the Yin clan could compare to. Sect leader Shui, the Patriarch asked me to tell you, the surviving trash of the 7-star sword sect that your Azure Forest Tri-sect wishes for nothing more than to get rid of and celebrate after, has already appeared in the Imperial City's Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Said the middle-aged man. 7-star sword sect surviving trash. At the beginning, Shui Rui didn't react to what these words meant, but after a short moment, his face went grim. You're talking about Duan Lingtian. Obviously, Shui Rui still didn't know of the news that Duan Lingtian had appeared. Exactly. The middle-aged man nodded hurriedly. Duan Lingtian, I never expected that you really dared leave the Crimson Sky Kingdom. Shui Rui's eyes contained cold lights that were piercingly cold, and his mood surged. The day, his personal disciple, Lu Yu, had learned of news about Duan Lingtian, and he'd originally thought that with 3 guardian elders making a move, that Duan Lingtian would die for sure. Unexpectedly, only 2 of their Azure Forest Tri-sect guardian elders had returned. Only at that time did he know that the tiny Crimson Sky Kingdom actually possessed a mysterious expert with extremely terrifying strength concealed within it. That mysterious expert didn't even show himself before directly killing one of their guardian elders. Even in the entire Azure Forest Tri-sect, the strength of that guardian elder was a top-rate existence, an expert at the 6th level of the void initiation stage. Since that time, he knew that it was impossible for them to kill Duan Lingtian in the Crimson Sky Kingdom. They could only wait for Duan Lingtian to come out himself. They were always waiting for a chance. Whereas now, this chance seemed to have arrived already. Sect leader Shui, the member of the Yin clan continued. Duan Lingtian has already stepped into the 1st level of the void prying stage, and not only that, but he hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted. What? You said he has already broken through to the void-prying stage? Shui Rui's face became gloomy, and the imposing manner on his body was like a rainbow as it shot into the sky and swept out into the surroundings. Instantly, that member of the Yin clan and the demon beast that carried over started shivering, and it was even to the extent they were in danger of losing strength at any moment and dropping to their deaths. Sect leader Shui, I haven't finished. The Yin clan member struggled to speak. Finally, Shui Rui's imposing manner was restrained by him. Whereas the Yin clan member and that demon beast seemed as if they'd lost all strength. When they caught their breath, the demon beast flapped its wings and retreated over 10 meters. Speak. Cold lights flickered in Shui Rui's eyes and his voice was exceedingly cold and indifferent. The matter of Duan Lingtian breaking through to the void-prying stage had caused him to be extremely shocked, and he felt as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Duan Lingtian seemed to not even be 25 years old this year, right? Sect leader Shui, not only has Duan Lingtian's cultivation broken through to the void-prying stage, he has even comprehended half-step advanced lightning force. As soon as he finished speaking, the member of the Yin clan urged the demon beast to fly off. Sect leader Shui, I'll be taking my leave. Shui Rui didn't pay any attention to the member of the Yin clan, he stood in the sky and his body unconsciously trembled. First level void-prying stage, half-step advanced lightning force. A strand of coldness emerged within Shui Rui's heart. If Duan Lingtian doesn't die, then my Azure Forest Trisect will surely die in the future. No matter what price must be paid, we must get rid of Duan Lingtian to prevent any future troubles. Shui Rui's figure flashed, transforming in a white-colored stream that instantly left the original location of the Snow Moon sect. He wanted to tell this matter to the other two sect leaders of the Azure Forest Trisect. This matter was related to the rise and fall of the Azure Forest Trisect. 507 Chapter 508, Flute Fairy, Ziyan. Duan Lingtian naturally knew nothing about what happened outside. He was currently quietly cultivating in the inner hall of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. At the same time that he was improving his cultivation, he didn't forget to cultivate martial skills and comprehend force of an even higher level. Comprehending half-step advanced wind force and half-step advanced lightning force at the first level of the void-prying stage is an accomplishment that even the rebirthed martial emperor didn't achieve all those years ago. Duan Lingtian flashed through the memories of the rebirthed martial emperor and he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. According to the memories of the rebirthed martial emperor, even when the second lifetime of the rebirthed martial emperor stepped into the first level of the void-prying stage, although he'd comprehended two types of force as well, only one of them was at the half-step advanced stage. The other type of force was only a force seed. Today seems to be the last day of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's registration. Duan Lingtian walked out of his room and arrived at the courtyard. Presently, the inner hall was extremely bustling. There were outer hall students that entered the inner hall to challenge the inner hall students from time to time, as they wanted to win even better treatment in the academy. Ji Feng. Suddenly, an explosive shout sounded out, and it attracted Duan Lingtian's gaze. Presently, there was a young man around the age of 35 standing outside a courtyard in the inner hall. Duan Lingtian had an impression of that courtyard. It was precisely the courtyard that the Ji clan's Ji Feng stayed in. Ji Feng was the first person Duan Lingtian was acquainted with on arriving at the Imperial City. Although they couldn't be considered to have a friendly relationship, Duan Lingtian was still interested to watch when there was someone challenging Ji Feng now. Instantly, Duan Lingtian's spiritual force stretched out to sweep towards the young man. Duan Lingtian noticed his cultivation at the first possible moment. Half-step void stage. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he thought in his heart. Looks like Ji Feng is probably going to be kicked out of the inner hall. HMPH. Right at this moment, a cold snort sounded out from Ji Feng's courtyard. Subsequently, Ji Feng's figure appeared before Duan Lingtian. Gang. Ji Feng walked out of his courtyard and looked at the young man outside. A person like you is worthy of challenging me. If it's your Z clan's zither young master, Zi Shang, I might be slightly afraid. As for you, I don't take you seriously. Shameless boasting. Gang sneered as he suddenly took a stride forward. Instantly, 1,500 lifelike ancient mammoth silhouettes were condensed into form in sky. Half-step void stage. Instantly, many spectating outer hall students couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Half-step void stage. When he saw the cultivation revealed by Gang, Ji Feng's indifferent expression slightly tightened. I truly never expected that you'd actually broken through to the half-step void stage. But do you think that you're able to defeat me because you've broken through to the half-step void stage? As he finished speaking, Jifeng took a stride forward as well. In the sky, the energy of heaven and earth roiled as 1,500 ancient mammoth silhouettes similarly appeared, and they were accumulating force while waiting to be deployed. Half-step void stage. Duan Lingtian was greatly surprised when he saw this scene, as he never expected that Jifeng had actually broken through to the half-step void stage during these past few days. The expression of Zhigang, who was originally filled with confidence, had become slightly gloomy. How about it? Do you still want to challenge me? Jifeng asked indifferently. HMPH. The raging origin energy on Zhigang's body seemed to have transformed into a ball of white flames that enveloped his entire body within it. He'd used his actions to respond to Jifeng. Then I'll play with you. Jifeng's figure moved. He seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that shot towards Zhigang. After a short moment, the two of them were in a fierce battle. In the beginning, neither of them utilized spirit weapons, and only relied on their origin energy to battle. Before long, the two of them utilized grade 6 spirit weapons at the same time. For a time, the two of them were equally matched. I truly never imagined that it had only been a few days and Jifeng had already broken through to the half-step void stage. The two of them are equally matched, and it was probably difficult to distinguish the victor. Many outer hall students whispered in discussion. Some of the inner hall students that were spectating had almost similar thoughts. Only Duan Lingtian's gaze never left Jifeng from the beginning until the end, and unknowingly, the corners of his mouth curled into a slight smile. Jifeng has really concealed his strength deeply. At almost the same instant that Duan Lingtian's thought had emerged, the grade 6 spirit sword in Jifeng's hand emitted strands of a sharp and peerless aura. Instantly, another 100 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the ancient mammoth silhouettes that had appeared from the amplification of his spirit sword. But these ancient mammoth silhouettes that had appeared weren't stable, and they fluctuated from 70 to 100 from time to time. However, even then, he still relied on this extra strength of almost 100 ancient mammoths to defeat Zhigang in one go. Zhigang was knocked flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body was shaking when he descended to the ground, seeming to be in a slightly sorry state. You actually comprehended a sword force seed. Zhigang's voice seemed to contain slight fear mixed within. Sword force seed. The surroundings went into an uproar, and the gazes of everyone shot onto Jifeng. Obviously, they never expected that Jifeng still had this ability. Jifeng's comprehension ability isn't bad. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Compared to the Saber Force seed that the Saber Young Master, Long Yun, executed that day, the Sword Force seed Jifeng comprehended had undoubtedly surpassed it slightly. Of course, this didn't say that Jifeng was stronger than Saber Young Master. After all, 2 years had already passed since he fought Saber Young Master the last time. The strength of Saber Young Master now would have surely advanced by leaps and bounds. Even to the extent that he'd have already broken through to the void prying stage. Saber Young Master, Demonic Lotus Blade Sect. When he thought of the Saber Young Master, Long Yun, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but recall the former Demonic Lotus Blade Sect. The Demonic Lotus Blade Sect was one of the chief culprits that had annihilated the 7-star Sword Sect, and the Saber Young Master was the foster son of the Demonic Lotus Blade Sect's leader. Besides Zishang, there isn't a second person in your Z clan's younger generation that can make me take them seriously. Jifeng looked at Zhigang as he mocked. Zhigang's face became gloomy as his body lightly trembled, and he felt extreme humiliation. Right at this moment, a chilly voice suddenly sounded out. Then let me, this person that you don't take seriously, properly experience your ability. Along with this chilly voice sounding out, a violet-colored beautiful figure that was accompanied by a wave of fragrance appeared in the inner hall to stand before Zhigang. Swoosh! Under the sleeve that was lined with gold borders, a white wrist slowly extended out and flicked out a medicinal pill, and it shot directly at Zhigang. After Zhigang caught the medicinal pill and swallowed it, he bowed respectfully to the person that had arrived. Young Miss Ziyan. Meanwhile, the beautiful figure turned around, her gracefully slender and delicate body that was like a devil's, and her face that was beautiful like an angel had appeared before the eyes of everyone. Even Duan Lingtian's eyes couldn't help but light up. In terms of appearance, this young woman wasn't inferior to his two fiancés. The young woman wore violet clothes. As she stood there, she first emitted a lofty aura, then she emitted a type of enchanting aura. Lofty and enchanting, a conflicting combination, and it caused the young woman to seem even more difficult to fathom. Young Miss Ziyan, she's the younger sister of Zither Young Master, Flute Fairy, Ziyan. Instantly, some people couldn't refrain from exclaiming in surprise. I heard long ago that the Flute Fairy, Ziyan, is the #1 beauty of our imperial city. Now that I've seen her here today, she really does deserve her reputation. The speed she entered the inner hall earlier was so swift. I've only heard that the Flute Fairy, Ziyan, had extremely high accomplishments in music, and even frequently does a flute and zither ensemble with her brother, and it could be said to be the sound of nature. Looks like the natural talent in the martial Tao of this young Miss Ziyan isn't low. The Z clan only possesses 2 recommendation quotas. Since young Miss Ziyan is able to occupy one of them, I presume her cultivation is extraordinary as well. I actually didn't know in the past that young Miss Ziyan had such a high natural talent in the martial Tao. Young Miss Ziyan has an elder brother like Zither Young Master, so even if her natural talent in the martial Tao isn't bad, it would surely be covered by Zither Young Master's brilliance and cause us to have no knowledge of it. After all, our gazes were mostly on Zither Young Master. The crowd of outer hall students discussed animatedly. Young Miss Ziyan, Jifeng still have a calm expression when facing Ziyan. Injuries are bound to happen in a battle. I hope that young Miss Ziyan doesn't act rashly. Otherwise, if I accidentally injure young Miss Ziyan, then it would be difficult for me to give Zither Young Master an explanation. Who in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City didn't know that Zither Young Master was extremely fond of this younger sister of his? If he were to injure Ziyan, then Zither Young Master would surely not let the matter go. Since you look down upon my Z clan members so much, then I'll prove to you that what you said is wrong. Ziyan's white wrist stretched out of her sleeve once again, and a jade flute that was translucent and crystalline to appear in her hand. Grade 5 Spirit Weapon. At this moment, Duan Lingtian just happened to have been inspecting Ziyan's cultivation with his spiritual force, and his spiritual force flashed past the jade flute in Ziyan's hands on the way, yet he noticed that it was a grade 5 spirit weapon. Looks like Jifeng is going to suffer. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. He noticed earlier that this flute fairy, Ziyan, was similar to Jifeng. She was in existence at the half-step void stage as well. Since young Miss Ziyan insists, then Jifeng can only be rude. Jifeng took a deep breath as the grade 6 spirit sword in his hand jerked, then his eyes gradually became cold. Young Miss Ziyan, make your move. Under the gazes of everyone present, Flute Fairy slowly raised her hand to place the grade 5 spirit flute on her bright red lips, then her hands lightly pulsed on the spirit flute as she breathed gracefully into the spirit flute. Whereas the spirit flute started to emit strand of origin energy that became more and more deep. Instantly, the sound of the flute rose and it was filled with the intent of slaughter. This was a song of slaughter. Instantly, 1,500 ancient mammoth silhouettes gradually condensed into form in the sky. Half-step void stage. This flute fairy, Ziyan, is actually at the half-step void stage as well. Instantly, the group of outer hall students were greatly shocked. In next to no time, when everyone saw the 720 ancient mammoth silhouettes that appeared beside the existing 1,500 ancient mammoth silhouettes, their faces were filled with shock. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Oh my god, the flute fairy, Ziyan, has a grade 5 spirit weapon like her brother, Zither Young Master. At this moment, besides Duan Lingtian, who had a calm expression, everyone else was completely shocked. 508 Chapter 509, Iron Wall Sword Body. At this moment, besides the 1,500 ancient mammoth silhouettes that a half-step void stage martial artist possessed, there was another 720 ancient mammoth silhouettes in the sky. It formed an extremely great contrast to the extra 570 ancient mammoth silhouettes that were above Jifeng. This was the difference between a grade 5 spirit weapon and grade 6 spirit weapon. An ordinary grade 5 spirit weapon was able to amplify strength by 48%. Whereas an ordinary grade 6 spirit weapon was only able to amplify strength by 38%. The difference was an entire 10%. To a half-step void stage martial artist, 10% was equivalent to the strength of 150 ancient mammoths. So what if it's a grade 5 spirit sword? I've comprehended a sword force seed and I'm not much inferior to you. Jifeng's face became slightly grim. He instantly concentrated and his body moved to fly out, choosing to strike first and gain the advantage. After all, even if his sword force seed's fluctuation in strength hit the limit, it would still be inferior to the flute fairy by the strength of over 10 ancient mammoths. If he wanted to win, then he had to take her by surprise. But would Jifeng be able to succeed? Suddenly, the spirit flute that lay horizontal before Flute Fairy's scarlet lips emitted a melody that became more and more hurried, and the origin energy within it even became completely material. Swish! As Jifeng's figure moved, a sword flashed out, seeming like a meteor that flashed in the night sky, and it went straight for the spirit flute in Flute Fairy's hands. As far as he was concerned, so long as he struck down the grade 5 spirit flute, it would be sufficient for him to firmly grasp victory. In this way, he would also not injure the Flute Fairy. Right at this moment, the melody that Flute Fairy played and originally contained the tune of slaughter abruptly changed to become exceedingly exalted. Whereas at this instant, swish, 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 the Flute Fairy blew gracefully as origin energy condensed on the spirit flute on her hand before pulsating according to the tune, and numerous light blades that were condensed from origin energy whistled as they flew out to greet Jifeng. The following scene caused everyone to be dumbstruck. The Flute Fairy is actually condensing origin energy into blades and executing attacks via the spirit flute. Duan Lingtian's heart couldn't help but shake when he saw the scene before him. Before his eyes, the Flute Fairy stood there with her violet clothes that fluttered without the wind, and the tips of her fingers on her delicate pair of hands ceaselessly pressed onto the spirit flute. Numerous light blades condensed from origin energy whistled as they flew out to flash directly towards Jifeng. These light blades seemed like a rain that wouldn't stop forever, and they ceaselessly descended onto Jifeng. Swish, 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 the grade 6 spirit sword in Jifeng's hand had swung out for an unknown amount of swings, and every time it swung out, it would destroy a light blade. But the light blades were truly too numerous. Later on, his movements seemed to be in slightly difficult state. Whereas Flute Fairy on the other hand stood there with a composed expression, and she gracefully blew in the spirit flute. Along with a deafening tune of slaughter sounding out, the numerous light blades that flashed out became even more fierce, swift, and peerless. Ah! Suddenly, Jifeng shouted out explosively, the origin energy on his body skyrocketed, then the grade 6 spirit sword in his hand returned to revolve around his body, and his origin energy transformed into numerous sword lights that twined around his body. Subsequently, Jifeng's body flashed out, and he actually relied on the protective barrier formed by these sword lights to charge towards Flute Fairy. Those light blades descended in patches onto the protective barrier around Jifeng's body, and then transformed into nothingness. It's the Li clan's Earth rank defense martial skill, Iron Wall Sword Body. Instantly, many people had recognized the martial skill Jifeng executed. Earth rank defensive martial skill. Duan Lingtian was shocked. According to his knowledge, an Earth rank defensive martial skill mostly relied on Earth force and Earth concept to be utilized. Just like the high-grade Earth rank defensive martial skill that came along with the 6th form of the Nine Dragons War Sovereign technique, it was a defensive martial skill that was powered by Earth concept. Earth rank defensive martial skills and profound rank defensive martial skills were two completely different notions. After one was at the origin core stage, the effects of a profound rank defensive martial skill were negligible. Whereas because force and concept had been fused into an Earth rank defensive martial skill, then if one is able to cultivate it to a certain extent, although it couldn't completely block an opponent's attacks, it was able to temporarily stop the opponent's attack and buy time for oneself. This was the charm of an Earth rank defensive martial skill. Now, although it was difficult for the Earth rank defensive martial skill Jifeng executed, the Iron Wall Sword Body, to continuously take Flute Fairy's light blade attacks head-on, relying on his Iron Wall Sword Body, he was still able to buy a large amount of time for himself. At least, before the Iron Wall Sword Body was destroyed, he'd have already approached near the Flute Fairy. Bang! Finally, the sword light defense around Jifeng's body that was condensed by relying on the Iron Wall Sword Body had been completely shattered by Flute Fairy's light blades that covered the sky. Meanwhile, Jifeng had already arrived near the Flute Fairy. Swish! Jifeng made his move, his sword flashed out, and after it crushed a few light blades, it seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that stabbed towards Flute Fairy. Jifeng has obviously seen through the Flute Fairy's weakness. The Flute Fairy attacked by using a tune of slaughter to condense light blades, and she's more adept in far-ranged battle. Now that he has approached her, it's difficult for her to withstand his sword with an advantage of the strength of only over 10 ancient mammoths. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he saw this scene. He originally thought Jifeng would lose, but he never expected that Jifeng would give him such a large, pleasant surprise. Ji Feng's live combat experience had exceeded his expectations. Right when most people broke out in cold sweat for Flute Fairy, the movements of Flute Fairy's fine fingers on the spirit flute became faster and faster. Whereas that tune of slaughter became more and more rapid. That is, in next to no time, Duan Lingtian's acute spiritual force had noticed the changes on the origin energy that twined the spirit flute in Flute Fairy's hands at the first possible moment. There seemed to have been something added between that origin energy. Duan Lingtian hadn't returned to his senses when Flute Fairy blew gracefully, and numerous light blades were condensed through the spirit flute once again. Swish, 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 numerous light blades lines up into an orderly line to intercept Ji Feng's sword that stabbed towards her. Break! Ji Feng's eyes were crimson red as he shouted out explosively, and he intended to smash all these light blades and defeat Flute Fairy. But in next to no time, his face went pale. Because the light blades that were lined into a row were completely different than the light blades from before, and it seemed to have extra strands of light azure-colored energy that was extremely gorgeous. Whereas now, another 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes had appeared in the sky above the existing 2,220 ancient mammoth silhouettes. Of course, these 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes weren't stable, and they fluctuated to 70 and 80 from time to time. Clang! The first light blade collided onto the grade 6 spirit sword in Ji Feng's hand, causing Ji Feng's body to shake lightly. Clang! The second light blade continued to blast over, and Ji Feng's face instantly became ghastly pale. Clang! The third light blade caused Ji Feng's face to flush red. Clang! The fourth light blade caused Ji Feng to spit out a mouthful of blood. Until the sixth light blade, Ji Feng's palm split open and blood dribbled down, and the grade 6 spirit sword in his hand was struck flying before dropping to the ground with a clang. Whereas when the remaining 3 light blades looked to be about to pierce into Ji Feng's chest and kill Ji Feng. Whoosh! A violet-colored figure seemed like a violet-colored ghost that followed up to the blades like a shadow and destroyed the 3 light blades with a raise of the hand. Bang! The translucent and crystalline jade flute descended onto Ji Feng's chest and blasted him flying. Bang! Ji Feng fell onto the ground in a sorry state, and he had an aggrieved expression. Whereas the violet-colored ghost's figure finally stopped and revealed Flute Fairy, Ziyan's, true appearance. What a formidable woman! Duan Lingtian gasped. This Flute Fairy was the younger sister of Zither Young Master. Based on her age, she was much younger than Zither Young Master from 1 year ago. In other words, her natural talent obviously surpassed Zither Young Master. Especially comprehension ability. Flute Fairy had already comprehended her wind force seed to the extreme. Earlier, when faced with Ji Feng's attack that could be considered to be flawless, she utilized her wind force seed in a timely manner and crushed Ji Feng in one go, and she was extremely decisive. Wind force seed. No matter if it was the outer hall students or the inner hall students, they were all shocked by Flute Fairy's ability. Your strength isn't bad, being able to force me to use my wind force seed at the half-step void stage. If I didn't have a grade 5 spirit flute, I might not be a match for you. Flute Fairy glanced indifferently at Ji Feng. Ji Feng took a deep breath. There's no ifs. If I have a grade 5 spirit weapon, I would use it as well. A loss is a loss. But I never imagined that as the younger sister of Zither Young Master, Flute Fairy actually possessed such a formidable natural talent and comprehension ability. If it's up to me, Flute Fairy isn't inferior to Zither Young Master in the slightest. Ji Feng's words were spoken with extreme sincerity. But Flute Fairy didn't appreciate it. HMPH. My brother is much stronger than me. If you dare talk bad about my brother again, I'll absolutely not let you off. Instantly, Flute Fairy's face seemed to be covered in a layer of frost, and it was extremely icy cold. Her words contained extreme protection towards Zither Young Master. For a time, the outer hall students that originally wanted to say similar things had obediently shut their mouths. That Zither Young Master actually has a younger sister like this. I really don't know how many years he cultivated to receive this fortune. Duan Lingtian slightly sighed with emotion in his heart when he saw the Flute Fairy, who'd instantly transformed into a female lion. You're Duan Lingtian. Right at the instant that Duan Lingtian was absent-minded, a chilly voice sounded out by his ear. Duan Lingtian raised his head and only now did he notice that Flute Fairy had looked towards him suddenly. Her pair of beautiful eyes contained coldness mixed within and were filled with hostility. Right, I'm Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded, and he wasn't surprised by Flute Fairy's hostility. After all, 1 year ago, he'd caused Zither young master to lose all face at the 7-star sword sect's Duby Peak. Perhaps along with the annihilation of the 7-star sword sect, this incident didn't spread out. But as the younger sister of Zither young master, Flute Fairy ought to know of it. The facts proved that Duan Ling Tian's guess was correct. I heard from my brother that you know demonic techniques. Flute Fairy's gaze was cold as she stared fixedly at Duan Ling Tian. I want to experience your demonic technique. Demonic technique. As soon as Flute Fairy finished speaking, everyone present looked at Duan Ling Tian. Duan Ling Tian knows demonic techniques. Many people were dumbstruck. I'm sorry, I don't know any demonic techniques. Duan Ling Tian was speechless when he heard Flute Fairy, then he shook his head before turning around and leaving. 509 Chapter 510, Demonic Technique Displaying Its Might. Stop. Duan Ling Tian had only just turned around when he heard a light shout coming from behind. At the same time, a blast of strong wind assaulted him. Duan Ling Tian frowned as he slightly exerted force with his feet. Whirlwind. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a gust of wind that instantly dodged Flute Fairy's sneak attack. Flute Fairy wasn't surprised that Duan Ling Tian was able to dodge her attack, and her pair of chilly eyes stared fixedly at Duan Ling Tian. Didn't you use a demonic technique to defeat my brother that day? What? Dare to do the deed, but not admit it. Flute Fairy's words caused a stir in the surroundings. Duan Ling Tian defeated Zither young master using a demonic technique. Although they didn't know what a demonic technique was, they faintly realized that Duan Ling Tian might not have won honorably, otherwise, Flute Fairy ought to not babble about it endlessly. Are you sure there's nothing wrong with you? Duan Ling Tian's face sank when being sneak attacked by Flute Fairy, and now that he heard Flute Fairy's aggressive words, his brows couldn't help but frown. Duan Ling Tian's words caused the people present to be speechless. They never expected that Duan Ling Tian was actually able to say such a thing to a beauty. Although this beauty had indeed gone too far earlier, as a man, he should at least have some tolerance when facing a woman, right? Of course, all this was only their personal way of thinking. Duan Ling Tian wouldn't be considerate when facing Flute Fairy just because she was beautiful. Moreover, not to mention, he already possessed 2 fiancés whose appearance and qualities weren't inferior to Flute Fairy. Even if he didn't, he still wouldn't act humble when dealing with a woman that had no manners. As far as he was concerned, Flute Fairy's appearance was unable to affect him. You. Flute Fairy was angered to the point her beautiful face flushed red, and with a raise of her hand, she actually placed the grade 5 spirit flute on her bright red lips. Suddenly, the tune of slaughter rose once more. At the same time that origin energy twined on the spirit flute, strands of wind force seed suffused out. When facing Duan Ling Tian, Flute Fairy used her full strength right off the bat. Swish, 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 numerous light blades condensed from origin energy whistled out, lining up into a line as they flashed straight towards Duan Ling Tian, seeming to want to pierce through Duan Ling Tian's body, and her wind force seed followed like a shadow amongst the light blades. HMPH. Duan Ling Tian's face sank when he heard the wave of a lofty tune of slaughter, and when faced with Flute Fairy's attack, at the same time that he snorted coldly, he raised his hand. Tempest Point. Duan Ling Tian's origin energy raged as he pointed out, and he only used the half-step advanced lightning force to condense an incomplete Tempest Point to intercept Flute Fairy's light blade attack. In terms of speed, Duan Ling Tian's Tempest Point far surpassed Flute Fairy's light blades that were condensed from origin energy combined with the tune of slaughter. In terms of strength, Duan Ling Tian's Tempest Point carried the strength of 2,500 ancient mammoths, and it completely crushed Flute Fairy's strength of 2,300 ancient mammoths. Swish! The Tempest Point tore through the sky, piercing the sky to the point the airflow in the sky flew apart, and it pointed towards the origin energy light blades that had formed a line. Poof, 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 a wave of shattering sounded out. It was Duan Ling Tian's Tempest Point piercing through those numerous origin energy light blades like sweeping through dry leaves, and it crushed Flute Fairy's attack. Subsequently, the Tempest Point's momentum didn't reduce in the slightest as it shaved past Flute Fairy's beautiful face as it flashed by before entering the wall at the side with a bang, and then passing through it. Pooh! Whereas Flute Fairy's countenance went ghastly pale at this moment, then her beautiful face flushed red before she spat out a mouthful of blood. After she spat out the blood, Flute Fairy's delicate figure trembled slightly. She had an extremely ghastly pale countenance and was on the verge of collapse, and she seemed delicate and touching. Duan Ling Tian is too ruthless. He's even able to lay his hand on such a beauty. If it was me, I'd surely not retort nor counterattack when faced with Flute Fairy's curses and attacks. The wave of sighing sounding out by his ears caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to refrain from smiling bitterly. Have these outer hall students not seen a woman in their entire lives? Duan Lingtian, you actually dare be disrespectful to young Miss Ziyan. I'll kill you. An explosive shout sounded out, and it was Zhigang who was defeated by Jifeng earlier that charged towards Duan Lingtian before smashing out with his fist that descended towards Duan Lingtian's head. You're courting death. Duan Lingtian's face sank, then his body jerked before leaving behind an afterimage on the spot. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out, and everyone at the scene only felt something flash before their eyes. It was Duan Lingtian who'd kicked Zhigang flying with a raise of his leg, causing Zhigang to knock onto the faraway wall and directly faint. This scene caused the hearts of everyone at the scene to be unable to help but go cold. Some of the outer hall students that were still feeling injustice was done to Flute Fairy had directly shut their mouths, and they didn't dare speak another word. Who knew if Duan Lingtian would suddenly attack them? They were afraid when they saw what happened to Zhigang. Duan Lingtian was able to notice that although Flute Fairy was injured by his tempest point to the point her face went ghastly pale, her chilly eyes were instead exceedingly firm, and she still stared fixedly at him. Why don't you use your demonic technique? Flute Fairy's voice was filled with a feeling of being not resigned. She wanted to prove to everyone that the reason her brother, Zither young master, had lost at Duan Lingtian's hand 1 year ago was because Duan Lingtian used a demonic technique, and not like the news that the members of the Azure Forest Trisect spread out, that Duan Lingtian had used his own strength to defeat her brother. She wanted to redress it for her brother. Duan Lingtian never expected that Flute Fairy was so stubborn, and for a time, he viewed her in a different light. Demonic technique. Duan Lingtian glanced at Flute Fairy with a spurious smile on his face. You really want to experience my demonic technique? Although he didn't think that a soul skill was a demonic technique, since others said this, he couldn't be bothered to refute it. Exactly. Flute Fairy nodded, and her chilly eyes were exceedingly firm. Then look carefully. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, a dim light that was difficult to notice slowly appeared deep within his eyes. Subsequently, his spiritual force fused into the soul brand. Thousand illusion. Instantly, Duan Lingtian executed the soul skill he possessed, and created an illusion space at Flute Fairy's locations. Whereas currently, Flute Fairy was enveloped by the illusion space, the scene before her eyes flashed, and she'd noticed that the place she was at had changed completely. The sudden changes caused Flute Fairy's beautiful face to change slightly, and her body shivered. Duan Lingtian really knows demonic techniques. How did he send me here? Flute Fairy sized up the surroundings. She noticed that it was a desert and not a trace of human habitation could be seen in all directions. What is this place? Flute Fairy's countenance was ghastly pale as she couldn't refrain from exclaiming in fear. Whereas at this moment, all the people in the inner hall were stunned when they saw Flute Fairy losing her composure. What's this Flute Fairy doing? Isn't this the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's inner hall? Is she possessed? She was still fine before, but at this moment, she seems as if she has suddenly become a different person. No matter if it was the crowd of outer hall students or inner hall students, they were all dumbstruck at this moment. The scene before them had completely exceeded their imagination. What's going on? Presently, even Crazy Young Master, Sword Young Master, Ji Feng, and Sima Yang were stunned. Flute Fairy said Duan Lingtian is able to use some demonic technique earlier. Could it be that this is Duan Lingtian's demonic technique? Ji Feng's gaze quickly became clear, and an unbelievable thought arose in his heart. This thought wasn't something even he himself didn't dare believe. The Flute Fairy wouldn't be working together with Duan Lingtian to put on a show, right? Ji Feng said to himself. He didn't dare believe it, nor was he willing to believe that such a strange thing existed in the world. What demonic technique? As far as he was concerned, all of this was a bunch of nonsense. In next to no time, the crowd of people that had just recovered from their shock were dumbstruck once more. Heavens! What had they seen? Under the gazes of everyone present, Flute Fairy moved like the wind as she ludicrously dashed towards Duan Lingtian. Don't leave, brother. Brother, don't leave Ziyan by herself. Ziyan is afraid, Ziyan is afraid. Everyone saw the when Flute Fairy dashed to arrive nearby Duan Lingtian, she suddenly stopped as grief and despair appeared on her face, and she muttered. Brother, how can you be so cruel? Leaving Ziyan all alone here, brother. Unknowingly, 2 streams of clear tears had flowed down Flute Fairy's face. This scene caused everyone present to be flabbergasted. They're putting on a play. This thought suddenly emerged within the hearts of everyone. They didn't know that everything Flute Fairy faced now was completely different from what they saw. Within that illusion space, Flute Fairy was within a boundless desert that she couldn't find the way out from, and she was at an extreme loss. She searched for a very long time within there, yet she didn't find the way to leave. Gradually, she despaired, whereas it was at this moment that she saw Zither Young Master, the brother that doted on her the most. But Zither Young Master was extremely cold and indifferent towards her, and even headed towards the distance. She wanted to chase after him, yet after chasing for a while, Zither Young Master had completely vanished before her eyes. In the end, she could only be laden with grief by herself. Are you satisfied now? When Flute Fairy felt extremely despaired, an indifferent voice sounded out by her ears, and it caused her to awaken as if awakening from a dream. When she returned to her senses, she noticed that the surrounding environment had changed once more, and she'd returned to the inner hall of Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Whereas before her, a violet-clothed young man stood there as he looked at her with an expressionless face. Flute Fairy recalled the scene from before and her face went gloomy. Earlier, at the desert without any signs of habitation. At the beginning, she was still curious how Duan Ling Tian had sent her here, but along with the passage of time at that place, she completely forgot everything about the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's inner hall, and she even forgot Duan Ling Tian was executing his demonic technique on her. Meanwhile, Flute Fairy noticed that the people present looked at her with extremely strange gazes. Exactly what happened earlier. Flute Fairy's gaze descended onto Ji Feng, and she asked via voice transmission. Ji Feng, what did you see earlier? Ji Feng cursed in his heart when he heard Flute Fairy's voice transmission. If you're acting, then act. Why did you make it so real? Could it be that you don't know what you did yourself? Of course, Ji Feng only thought like this in his heart. Subsequently, he sent a voice transmission, and he explained everything that happened earlier with a lack of interest. 510 Chapter 511, Soul Skill, Soul Shaker. Ji Feng's voice transmission entered into Flute Fairy's ears, and it caused her to be dumbstruck. Under the gazes of everyone present, she'd cried and made noises as if she'd gone mad. All her behavior in the strange desert earlier was seen by everyone present. Instantly, Flute Fairy's face became deathly pale, and boundless shame arose in her heart. She wished for nothing more than to dig a hole and hide within it. Ji Feng had an expression of disdain when he saw Flute Fairy's expression, and he cursed in his heart. FK off. Go on, pretend. Do you really think I'm unable to discern that you were putting on an act earlier? Presently, there were many people with similar thoughts as Ji Feng. Because, everything that happened earlier had completely exceeded their scope of understanding. You're really capable of demonic techniques. Flute Fairy stretched out her hand to point at Duan Ling Tian in embarrassment, her slender and smooth finger lightly trembled as she was extremely agitated. Duan Ling Tian glanced at Flute Fairy with waning interest, then shrugged. If you think it's a demonic technique, then it's a demonic technique. Now, you wanted to experience my demonic technique and I've allowed you to. Don't disturb me anymore. After he finished speaking, Duan Ling Tian returned to his own courtyard, then walked into the house in the courtyard and directly closed the door. Leaving behind Flute Fairy, whose beautiful face was angered to the point it flushed red and her eyes were filled with traces of shame. This Duan Ling Tian actually caused her to make a fool of herself in public. However, when she thought of how she made Duan Ling Tian utilize his demonic technique, she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Her hard work was repaid. At least, she proved the fact that Duan Ling Tian knew demonic techniques. HMPH. If it wasn't for relying on being able to use demonic techniques, how could this Duan Ling Tian be a match for my brother that day? Flute Fairy's voice raised slightly, and she wanted to use the people present to spread out this truth, and redress the outcome of fight for her brother. But she quickly noticed that most of the people present looked at her as if they were looking at an idiot, and they obviously didn't believe what she said. All of you, Flute Fairy was anxious. She's racked her brains to make Duan Ling Tian use his demonic technique, and she'd even acted ludicrously in public, yet what she got in return was actually such an outcome. She wasn't resigned. I'm speaking the truth. Duan Ling Tian really knows how to use demonic techniques. Earlier, I don't know how, but I'd arrived at a desert that didn't have the slightest trace of habitation. When Flute Fairy spoke up to hear, she didn't continue. because she noticed that the gazes of everyone present had become even stranger. Young Miss Ziyan, so long as it's a normal person, they would be able to discern that you and Duan Lingtian had joined together to put on a show earlier. Although I don't know what the two of you seek by doing this, I still want to tell you that unless someone has something wrong in their head, otherwise, no one will believe you. Jifeng looked at Flute Fairy and sent a voice transmission in goodwill. Flute Fairy's delicate figure trembled slightly, and her beautiful face flushed red. Everything she said was true, yet why did no one believe it? She wasn't resigned to this fate. Duan Lingtian, come out. In next to no time, Flute Fairy strode forward to arrive before the courtyard that Duan Lingtian stayed at, and she shouted out with a chilly voice. Duan Lingtian had only just sat cross-legged since entering the room and intended to cultivate when he heard Flute Fairy's cold shout. He instantly frowned, then opened the door and walked out. Woman, are you done yet? Duan Lingtian's face seemed to be covered in a layer of ice as he spoke impatiently. You asked me to let you experience the demonic technique, and I've done so. Now you still try to climb all over me. Duan Lingtian, tell them that I didn't deceive them. You indeed know how to utilize demonic techniques and can send me to a strange place, said Flute Fairy to Duan Lingtian in an extremely hurried tone. So long as I say it, you won't disturb me any longer. Duan Lingtian asked cautiously. He didn't want to be bothered by this woman, otherwise, he would basically be unable to cultivate. Yes. Flute Fairy didn't hesitate in the slightest and nodded hurriedly. As far as she was concerned, so long as Duan Lingtian was willing to admit it, it ought to be sufficient to make the people present to be convinced and stop saying she was speaking false words. I hope you can keep your promise. Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Flute Fairy, and his icy cold and fierce gaze caused her to be unable to stop herself from shivering. Everyone, Flute Fairy didn't deceive all of you. I indeed know how to utilize demonic techniques, right? If anyone is interested, I can allow you to try the feeling of being an emperor, and even being a martial emperor isn't a problem. Duan Lingtian glanced at the outer hall and inner hall students present as he spoke in all seriousness. But his serious words instead caused the crowd of Dragon and Phoenix Academy students to break out with laughter. Remember your promise. Duan Lingtian glanced coldly and indifferently at Flute Fairy after he finished speaking, then he returned to his room once again and started cultivating. Flute Fairy heaved a sigh of relief. But in next to no time, she was dumbstruck once again. All of you, she noticed that not only did the gazes of the people present not change, it even became stranger. At this moment, she finally realized that if she didn't make these people personally experience it, it would be impossible for them to believe Duan Lingtian knew how to use demonic techniques. In the end, she could only walk over to the courtyard that originally belonged to Jifeng and now belonged to her with a bitter expression, then return to her room. Duan Lingtian, I'll make everyone believe the fact that you know demonic techniques sooner or later. After she returned to her room, Flute Fairy had her back to the door and was aggrieved to the point that tears flowed down her beautiful cheeks, and she spoke with an enraged expression. Since she was born, this was the first time she'd suffered such a great injustice. That feeling of being misunderstood by everyone caused her to feel extremely unhappy. Now she finally understood the meaning of the words her brother spoke to her 1 year ago before leaving the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Yan, brother is going to follow master and cultivate. I'll surely find a way to defeat Duan Lingtian's demonic technique and wash away this humiliation. He caused me to lose all face, and caused me to encounter the doubt of everyone from the 7-star sword sect. Those were the words her brother, the zither young master, Zi Shang, said to her before leaving the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. At that time, it was difficult for her to understand the rage and grievance in her brother's heart. But now, she understood it completely. Because, she'd lost all face before the crowd of Dragon and Phoenix Academy students, and suffered the doubt of the crowd at the same time. Duan Lingtian, I'll surely help my brother find a way to overcome your demonic technique. Ziyan lightly clenched her white teeth, and her beautiful face was extremely firm. Duan Lingtian naturally didn't know about everything that happened outside. Currently, he was silently cultivation the 5th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, the lightning worm form. Time silently flowed by. After an unknown amount of time, Duan Lingtian awoke after he felt the origin energy in his body had reached a saturated state once more. Squeak squeak, right at this moment, a wave of familiar cries sounded out. Subsequently, he saw a bolt of golden lightning flash before his eyes before his shoulders slightly sunk, and a fluffy little gold thing had appeared there. It was precisely the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse. Little Gold, you've awoken. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. Hee, big brother Lingtian, I've finally broken through. The little gold mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears and it was filled with excitement and delight. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he heard this, then his spiritual force stretched out, and he discovered the little gold mouse's current cultivation at the first possible moment. 7th level of the void prying stage. Little Gold had finally broken through to the 7th level of the void prying stage. Little Gold, your spiritual force, Duan Lingtian seemed to have thought of something, and he looked at the little gold mouse with a burning gaze. But he saw the little gold mouse's shiny jade green eyes had instantly gone dim, then she drooped her little head as she said via voice transmission, Big brother Lingtian, I still haven't awakened my soul brand and was unable to comprehend the elementary soul skills of my jade-eyed heavenly mouse race. A trace of a sense of loss that was difficult to notice flashed in Duan Lingtian's eyes when he heard this. But he still consoled, it's alright, work hard and cultivate properly. Make your cultivation and spiritual force advance by a few levels and you'll surely be able to awaken your soul brand. Out of the blue, an unexpected event suddenly occurred at this moment. Duan Lingtian saw that the little gold mouse suddenly raised her head, and her pair of jade green eyes that were originally dim had abruptly lit up. Not only that, he saw that within the little gold mouse's pair of jade green eyes, a strand of imperceptible golden flames had emerged in each of them. What's that? Right when wonder emerged in Duan Lingtian's heart. He felt a formidable spiritual force that was swift to the extreme sweep over, and before he had the time to react, it had already pierced into his soul. In the next moment, his soul shook, and the little gold mouse before him and everything within his field of vision had become blurry. Not only that, he also noticed that at this moment, the origin energy that he mobilized from his entire body was gradually on the verge of collapse from the shaking of his soul. After a short moment, he noticed that the formidable spiritual force that attacked him had completely vanished. Whereas his consciousness gradually became clear. Everything returned to normal. Little Gold, you little fellow. You actually deceived me. When Duan Lingtian returned to his senses, he glared angrily at the little gold mouse. He was naturally able to guess what happened earlier. It was obviously the little gold mouse who'd relied on her soul brand that had awoken to utilize her soul skill to trap him. Hee, big brother Lingtian, I'm formidable, right? The little gold mouse raised her little head proudly, and asked with slight complacency. Yes. When he recalled the scene from before, Duan Lingtian nodded with a slight lingering fear in his heart, and at the same time, he asked curiously. Little Gold, what soul skill did you execute earlier? Everything that happened earlier in that instant was something he wasn't willing to experience a second time in this lifetime. At that moment, he even had the feeling that his life had escaped his control. Big brother Lingtian, that's the first soul brand that I awakened after my spiritual force broke through into the void initiation stage. The soul skill that's paired with this soul brand is called Soul Shaker. The little gold mouse's voice transmission slowly entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it caused his mood to surge. Soul Shaker. What an overbearing soul skill. This soul skill, Soul Shaker, ought to belong to offensive soul skills, right? Duan Lingtian asked. At that instant earlier, he was able to clearly feel that the little gold mouse's spiritual force had instantly pierced into his soul. 511. Chapter 512, Counter-Tracking. Yes, it's an offensive soul skill. The little gold mouse replied, then continued saying via voice transmission. But, it's only an elementary soul skill, and isn't able to directly crush another's soul. It's only able to cause others' minds to be unguarded for a short period of time. Causing one's mind to be unguarded. When he recalled the scene of the little gold mouse's spiritual force piercing into his soul and the torture he'd suffered at that instant, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but feel a lingering fear in his heart. At that instant, even a body-tempering stage martial artist was probably able to kill him by relying on a weapon. At that moment, he was undoubtedly at his weakest. Abnormal. Duan Lingtian's heart shook. In next to no time, after communicating with the little gold mouse, Duan Lingtian obtained a certain level of understanding towards the little gold mouse's Soul Shaker. Soul Shaker's scope of effect was almost similar to his 1,000 illusions. Besides being useless against existences who possessed spiritual forces that were stronger than themselves, it was also useless when facing inscriptions masters who possessed a similar level of spiritual force and variant demon beasts who had similarly awakened their soul brand. In other words, so long as they aren't inscription masters or demon beasts that have awakened their soul brand, Little Gold's soul shaker would be able to affect martial artists and demon beasts with the same cultivation as her spiritual force. Duan Lingtian came to a complete understanding. Presently, Little Gold's spiritual force is at the first level of the Void Initiation stage. In other words, even if it's an ordinary first-level Void Initiation stage martial artist, then so long as the martial artist isn't an inscription master, Little Gold would be able to use Soul Shaker to cause the martial artist's mind to become unguarded. When Duan Lingtian thought up to here, a wisp of an evil smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. If I make a move and attack the first-level Void Initiation stage martial artist at this time, then the martial artist would die for sure. In other words, as long as I cooperate with Little Gold now, then so long as we don't encounter a person whose spiritual force is at a higher level than Little Gold and an inscription master with a spiritual force at a similar level as Little Gold, then I can walk unhindered in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City. Duan Lingtian felt a wave of excitement in his heart when he thought up to here. Big brother Lingtian, I'm tired, I want to rest for a while. Right at this moment, the Little Gold Mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian noticed that the Little Gold Mouse had fallen asleep. The Little Gold Mouse slept for an entire night and day. Little Gold, what happened to you yesterday? Duan Lingtian asked impatiently after the Little Gold Mouse awoke. Big brother Lingtian, after I used the Soul Shaker, my spiritual force seemed as if it was completely sucked out. Even now, it still hasn't completely recovered. The Little Gold Mouse's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it caused Duan Lingtian's heart to jerk. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and asked, Little Gold, then can you utilize that soul skill, Soul Shaker, now? The Little Gold Mouse shook her head. No, the state of my spiritual force must attain its peak condition before I'm able to utilize Soul Shaker. Then how long do you need to recover after using Soul Shaker once? Duan Lingtian asked. At this moment, Duan Lingtian suddenly realized that he had perhaps gotten happy too early. Little Gold's soul skill, Soul Shaker, seemed to have some restrictions. Almost around half a month, replied the Little Gold Mouse via voice transmission. Half a month? Duan Lingtian laughed bitterly. Looks like he'd indeed gotten happy too early. In this way, Little Gold's Soul Shake can only be used once every half a month. Duan Lingtian sighed to himself and was slightly disappointed. With a quick thought he came to a sudden understanding. As expected, the hearts of people are never content. Even if it's half a month once, it's still sufficient to be shocking. After all, Little Gold is only a 7th level Void Prying Stage Demon Beast now, and being able to use soul skills to affect ordinary 1st level Void Prying Stage martial artists and demon beasts is already extremely abnormal. Little Gold, tell me when your spiritual force has recovered to its peak. At that time, I intend to use the chance to go out this month, said Duan Lingtian to the Little Gold Mouse. The Little Gold Mouse's pair of jade green eyes lit up when she heard this, and they were like two dazzling and resplendent gemstones. Big brother Lingtian, you want to go look for materials that can advance the grade of spirit swords? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. Not only do I want to find materials to advance the grade of spirit swords, I still want to buy some materials to refine medicinal pills that assist Void Prying Stage martial artists in their cultivation. When she heard Duan Lingtian, the Little Gold Mouse was exceedingly excited. Half a month passed extremely swiftly. It had already been 20 days since Duan Lingtian arrived at the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Although Outer Hall students would occasionally enter the Inner Hall to issue a challenge, it wasn't as bustling as half a month ago. Now, the 10 students in the Inner Hall was basically fixed. Big brother Lingtian, my spiritual force has recovered to its peak, let's go out. Early in the morning, the Little Gold Mouse excitedly sent a voice transmission to Duan Lingtian. All right, Duan Lingtian nodded, then brought the Little Gold Mouse along as he left the courtyard. The Inner Hall was completely silent, as the 10 Inner Hall students were either in their rooms cultivating or not in the Inner Hall. Besides having a path that led to the Outer Hall, the Inner Hall also had another shortcut that could directly lead to the gate of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Duan Lingtian chose the shortcut. After a short moment, he'd arrived the Academy gate. At that place, 2 old men were standing like guardians at the sides of the gate, and they didn't move like a mountain, seeming to be 2 statues. Whereas before the stone table at the side of the Academy gate sat an old man. This old man was precisely the person that was in charge of registering the entrance and departure of Academy students. Senior. Duan Lingtian noticed that the old man behind the stone table was the exact same old man that registered him 20 days ago. Duan Lingtian. The old man frowned when he saw Duan Lingtian. Didn't I tell you that it's best that you not casually leave that academy? Senior, I have something to do and must go out. Duan Lingtian knew the old man meant well, and his heart felt warm. The old man persuaded Duan Lingtian for a moment longer, and when he saw Duan Lingtian remained unmoved, he could only compromise and help Duan Lingtian register himself. Before Duan Lingtian left, the old man reminded. Duan Lingtian, I'm afraid the matter of you arriving at our Dragon and Phoenix Academy has already spread to the Azure Forest Trisect long ago. If you go out, return as soon as possible so as to avoid any troubles from occurring. Yes, Senior, Duan Lingtian replied before leaving the academy. Duan Lingtian hadn't left for long before he noticed two concealed gazes locked onto him by relying on his acute spiritual force and counter-tracking ability. They aren't together. What caused Duan Lingtian to be surprised was that these two people were actually not together. One of them was a first-level void-prying stage martial artist. The other one was a 9th-level void-prying stage martial artist. I can deal with this 9th-level void-prying stage martial artist if I rely on Little Gold's Soul Shaker, but Soul Shaker can only be used once a month, and I can't waste it like this. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian had come to a decision in his heart. Avoid the 9th-level void-prying stage martial artist. As for the 1st-level void-prying stage martial artist, Duan Lingtian's figure flashed out, seeming to have transformed into a gust of wind as he instantly vanished at the end of the street. Whereas in the shadows, two figures appeared and chased after him. In next to no time, they noticed that they'd lost the tracks of their target. Where is he? The two of them were at different places, yet both had dazed expressions. I'll first report to the two guardian elders about the news of Duan Lingtian leaving the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. I presume that with the ability of the two guardian elders, it isn't difficult for them to stop Duan Lingtian from returning to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. One of them was a middle-aged man, and he muttered before intending to leave the remote alley he was in now. But when he walked forward, he instead noticed that a figure had appeared ahead. This figure was familiar to him. Duan Lingtian. The middle-aged man recognized the person before him, and his heart shook as his face went pale. He was able to discern that Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed him since long ago, and had intentionally lured him here. Flee. Without any hesitation, he directly stepped on the air to soar up. What a joke! Although he was a first-level void-prying stage martial artist like Duan Lingtian, he knew his limitations. He was absolutely not a match for Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was an existence that had comprehended half-step advanced lightning force. Squeak squeak, the middle-aged man has just soared into the sky when he heard a wave of ear-piercing howls of the wind. Subsequently, he saw a fluffy and chubby little gold mouse had appeared not far ahead. The little gold mouse stood in the air, looking harmless and extremely cute. However, at this moment, his body unconsciously stopped as his pupils constricted and he had an expression of extreme astonishment. Because, above the little gold mouse that had appeared before him was an enormous silhouette that curled downwards as it condensed into form, and it looked ferocious. It was an ancient horned dragon silhouette. Seventh level void-prying stage. The middle-aged man's voice was filled with trembling. Whoosh! Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian had arrived behind the middle-aged man as well. You're a member of the Azure Forest Trisect? Duan Lingtian looked at the middle-aged man and asked indifferently. No, I'm not a member of the Azure Forest Trisect, you're mistaken. The middle-aged man hurriedly shook his head. What a joke! How would he dare admit he was a member of the Azure Forest Trisect at this moment? As an elder of the Azure Forest Trisect that had taken part in the process of annihilating the 7-star sword sect, he was extremely clear of the enmity between the Azure Forest Trisect and Duan Lingtian. If he allowed Duan Lingtian to know that he was an elder of the Azure Forest Trisect, then he would die for sure. Mistaken. Duan Lingtian laughed as he said indifferently, if I'm not wrong, you were present when our 7-star sword sect was annihilated by your Azure Forest Trisect. Let me think, at that time, you should have been in the demonic Lotusblade sect's group. Since when did an Azure Forest Trisect elder not dare admit his own identity? As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian had a ridiculing smile on his face. Although he wasn't able to remember the faces of all the Azure Forest Trisect members that invaded the 7-star sword sect that day, He still clearly remembered the faces of the group of Azure Forest Trisect elders, and it was engraved into his heart and bones. This middle-aged man was one of them. The middle-aged man's expression became ghastly pale when he saw Duan Lingtian had recognized him, and his gaze became complicated, then his gaze occasionally swept to the left, then occasionally to the right. She will tear you to pieces if you dare flee. Duan Lingtian's voice was filled with extreme coldness, and it caused the middle-aged man's figure to shiver and not dare make any rash movements. 512 Chapter 513, Weapons Craftsman Guild's Main Guild. How many of people from your Azure Forest Trisect have come for the sake of getting rid of me? Duan Lingtian's voice slowly sounded out, and it was exceedingly empty without the slightest emotion. Coldness appeared at the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth when he saw the middle-aged man keeping his mouth shut, and he threatened. If you don't cooperate, then I'll kill you right now. You won't kill me if I cooperate. The middle-aged man imperceptibly shook as he took a deep breath and asked in a low voice. I won't kill you if you cooperate. Duan Lingtian nodded. The middle-aged man heaved a sigh of relief when he obtained Duan Lingtian's agreement. I came with 2 guardian elders. Normally, the 2 guardian elders would wait for news at the inn and I would come out to look out for your whereabouts. The 2 guardian elders have given orders to notify them at the first possible moment once I notice you leaving the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. The middle-aged man continued. So in other words, the guardian elders of the Azure Forest Trisect don't dare to forcefully trespass into the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a cold smile. The middle-aged man went silent. The Dragon and Phoenix Academy was an academy established by the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family, and was protected by the imperial family. Although their Azure Forest Trisect was extremely influential in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, it wasn't to the extent of being able to go against the imperial family, so they naturally didn't dare offend the imperial family. Who are the 2 guardian elders that have come from your sect? Duan Lingtian asked. Actually, Duan Lingtian already had a guess in his heart, and he just wanted to confirm it a step further. It's Elder Huo and Elder Ming, the middle-aged man hurriedly said. Speak their names. Duan Lingtian's gaze went cold, and at this instant, the temperature of the surrounding air seemed to go down slightly. The middle-aged man's figure shook as he added. It's Elder Tang Huo and Elder Zhao Ming. Tang Huo, Zhao Ming, it really is them. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a smile of ridicule, then he glanced at the middle-aged man indifferently. After the Azure Forest Trisect obtained the news of my appearance this time, it ought to be Tang Huo and Zhao Ming who took the initiative to request for the assignment to kill me, right? Yes. The middle-aged man nodded. Although he was curious why Duan Lingtian would know this, he didn't dare ask. Zhang Lin didn't come, Duan Lingtian asked again. Tang Huo and Zhao Ming's appearance was within his expectations, as the 2 of them were presumably unable to forget the 10,000-year stalactite milk. But, Zhang Lin not coming had exceeded his expectations. He still remembered that when he mentioned the 10,000-year stalactite milk that day, that Azure Forest Trisect elder, Zhang Ling, was present as well. Logically speaking, Zhang Lin probably wouldn't miss a good opportunity to capture him. Elder Zhang Lin died 1 year ago, said the middle-aged man. Dead. Duan Lingtian was stunned. How did he die? Duan Lingtian was slightly curious. That Zhang Lin was a 6th-level Void Initiation stage expert, after all, and people who could kill him in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom could be counted on one's fingers. I heard he was killed in the Crimson Sky Kingdom, even I'm not too clear about the specifics. The middle-aged man continued. Crimson Sky Kingdom. Duan Lingtian's brows raised, and he thought of the mysterious expert from that day at the first possible moment. That mysterious expert hadn't shown himself, yet deterred the 3 guardian elders of the Azure Forest Trisect to flee merely by relying on his matchlessly formidable imposing manner. Could it be that Senior did it? Duan Lingtian guessed in his heart. Which inn are the Tang Huo and Zhao Ming staying in? Duan Lingtian looked at the little gold mouse after he obtained the last piece of information he wanted to know from the middle-aged man. Little gold, I'll leave it to you. Duan Lingtian's voice abruptly went cold. Squeak squeak, the little gold mouse cried out excitedly, and her jade-green eyes locked tightly onto the middle-aged man. You deceived me. You said you wouldn't kill me. Coldness emerged from the middle-aged man's heart when he was locked on by the little gold mouse, his body shivered as he pointed at Duan Lingtian in panic. I only said that I wouldn't kill you, I didn't say I wouldn't let her kill you. Duan Lingtian's tone was calm and didn't carry any emotion within it. The middle-aged man revealed an expression of despair, and his figure flashed out, intending to flee. But he didn't even have the time to move before a tiny sword light that was swift as a bolt of lightning had already slashed past the sky to swipe past his throat. Dead. Squeak squeak. When she saw the middle-aged man die and his corpse crashing to the ground, the little gold mouse swung her pocket-sized spirit sword about and was extremely happy. Hiss. With a raise of his hand, a strand of blue flames leapt up on Duan Lingtian's palm. Subsequently, the flames descended onto the middle-aged man's corpse. The middle-aged man's corpse didn't even land on the ground when it had already transformed into ash that covered the sky and dispersed with the wind. Grade 4 weapon flame was exceedingly overbearing. Little Gold, let's go, we're going to the Weapons Craftsman Guild. He called out to the little gold mouse. After he asked for directions from someone, Duan Lingtian quickly found the Weapons Craftsman Guild. This Weapons Craftsman Guild was also the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Weapons Craftsman Guild's main guild. As the main guild of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Weapons Craftsman Guild, it was extremely bustling, with streams of people moving in and out endlessly. Duan Lingtian noticed many weapons craftsmen. Based on the crest that they wore on their chests, they were mostly grade 8 and grade 9 weapons craftsmen, and he could occasionally see 1 or 2 grade 7 weapons craftsmen. As for a grade 6 weapons craftsman, Duan Lingtian instead didn't see a single one. A grade 6 weapons craftsman is considered to be an extremely rare existence in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, after all, because there are no grade 5 weapons craftsmen in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, grade 6 weapons craftsmen can reign supreme. Duan Lingtian quickly came to an understanding. The Weapons Craftsman Guild's hall was extremely spacious. When Duan Lingtian entered, he noticed that the various counters in the hall were almost filled with people. A portion of these people were weapons craftsmen that had come to accept assignments or buy materials, and another portion were ordinary martial artists that had come to put up assignments. The clamorous atmosphere in the hall caused Duan Lingtian to be slightly unaccustomed to it. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian arrived before the counter that had just become empty, and he went straight to the point. I want to see your guild master. The worker behind the counter was a beautiful woman in pretty attire, and she was stunned when she heard Duan Lingtian. Then she said, little brother, our guild master is extremely busy, and he isn't someone you can meet on a whim. Normally, even I. The beautiful woman hadn't finished speaking when she stopped abruptly. Her pair of watery eyes sprang wide open at this moment. Her proud and delicate body lightly trembled and was filled with charm, and it caused one to have the desire of pouncing over before pressing her onto the floor and ravaging her. All of this came from Duan Lingtian's actions. With a raise of his hand and with an angle that only the beautiful woman was able to see, a strand of raging and explosively rising flames burned on Duan Lingtian's palm. Weapon flame. If it was an ordinary weapon flame, the beautiful woman would naturally not react like this. The problem was the weapon flame on Duan Lingtian's hand was blue in color. 4. Grade 4 weapon flame. The beautiful woman fiercely gulped down a mouthful of saliva and her light voice trembled intensely. As a worker of the Weapons Craftsman Guild, she was extremely clear of what a grade 4 weapon flame meant. Even she had only heard of a grade 4 weapon flame, but had never seen one. The beautiful woman only recovered from her shock after Duan Lingtian put out the grade 4 weapon flame on his hand, and when she looked at Duan Lingtian once more, her gaze was completely different. She didn't dare look down on Duan Lingtian because of his age anymore. She knew that this was a respected grade 4 weapons craftsman. Do I have the qualifications to see your guild master now? Duan Lingtian asked. Respected Lord Grade 4, guest, please follow me. The beautiful woman intended to address Duan Lingtian as Lord Grade 4 weapons craftsman, but when she saw the fierce gaze that Duan Lingtian shot at her, she instantly changed it. She was able to discern that this Grade 4 weapons craftsman didn't want others to know his identity. The Weapons Craftsman Guild's hall was extremely large, and the departure of Duan Lingtian and the beautiful woman didn't attract the attention of others. Duan Lingtian followed behind the beautiful woman to walk into the inner hall behind the hall. There was a staircase that led upstairs within the inner hall. The beautiful woman led the way at the front, and Duan Lingtian followed behind. All along the way, the shock in the beautiful woman's eyes was difficult to be restrained. A grade 4 weapons craftsman was sufficient to make her shocked. But now, what truly made her shocked was the age of the young man that followed behind her. The young man looked to be not over 25. Even if he took good care of his appearance, he wouldn't be more than 30 years old. Such a young grade 4 weapons craftsman had completely overturned her past knowledge. Not to mention the Tao of weapons refinement is more difficult as it advances. Condensing a grade 4 weapon flame requires a cultivation at least at the first level of the void prying stage. Since this young man is able to condense a grade 4 weapon flame, I presume his cultivation has already stepped into the void prying stage. The beautiful woman was able to feel that her heartbeat was speeding up. Young geniuses in our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that are below 30 years old and have stepped into the void prying stage can be counted on one's fingers, let alone a person who also has such attainments in the Tao of weapons refinement. The beautiful woman took a deep breath and guessed the identity of the young man behind her in her heart. Could it be that he's from the Darkened Dynasty? Or perhaps, he's from the foreign lands? While the beautiful woman made a variety of guesses, they'd finally arrived at their destination. Duan Lingtian followed behind the beautiful woman and had arrived at the 3rd floor. Guild Master. The beautiful woman stood at the stairway on the 3rd floor and respectfully bowed. There was a door there that was covered by a curtain. Come in. An aged voice sounded out from behind the curtain. Guest, please. The beautiful woman took a stride forward and pulled open the curtain, then she gestured Duan Lingtian in. The instant that Duan Lingtian strode in, he noticed a formidable spiritual force instantly sweep out to lock onto him. At this instant, he even had the feeling of being stripped naked. This spiritual force seemed as if it could see through everything. What a formidable spiritual force, it isn't much inferior to Elder Kong. Duan Lingtian's heart shook. Elder Kong was precisely that old man that Duan Lingtian had become acquainted with in the city governor's estate of the Darkstone Empire's Phoenix Nest City, and he was an inscription master. An inscription master whose art of inscriptions could be said to be at the top in the entire Darkened Dynasty. 513 Chapter 514, Jadewave Grass. Duan Lingtian raised his head and looked at the owner of this formidable spiritual force. This was an old man in green robes, his figure and face were both gaunt, yet his eyes were brimming with spirit and flickered with a frightful bright light. Presently, the old man's gaze had descended onto Duan Lingtian and his brows were tightly knit. Guild Master. Meanwhile, the beautiful woman entered behind Duan Lingtian and said respectfully, "This guest said he wants to see you." "See me." The green-robed old man's white brows frowned, and he had an unhappy expression as he said with a deep voice, "Could it be that it's your first day in the Weapons Craftsman Guild? Did I say since long ago to not bring any random person here?" The beautiful woman smiled bitterly, and she wasn't surprised by the old man's reaction. "Guild Master. This guest is special," the beautiful woman added. "Special?" A trace of bewilderment appeared on the old man's face. "Guild Master, this guest," the beautiful woman had only just started speaking when she shut her mouth, because she saw the young man beside her flip his palm and a strand of blue-colored flames leaping about on his palm. She knew that at this moment, there was no need for her to introduce him any longer. Whereas the old man's pupils abruptly constricted at this moment. His gaunt face slightly twitched. Grade 4 weapon flame. You're a grade 4 weapons craftsman." The old man's voice trembled slightly, and amongst the trembling, his voice was filled with shock. "Didn't you already see it, Guild Master?" Duan Lingtian had a calm expression when faced with the old man's question, and with a flip of his palm, he put out the grade 4 weapon flame on his hand. The old man finally recovered from his shock when he saw the grade 4 weapon flame vanish from his sight, then he took a deep breath before looking at the beautiful woman. "You can leave now, you're not allowed to mention this master to anyone." As he finished speaking, the old man added emphasis to his words. "Yes, Guild Master." The beautiful woman didn't dare hesitate, and she hurriedly replied before turning and leaving. For a time, only Duan Lingtian and the old man remained at the scene. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Weapons Craftsman Guild's leader, Luo Rong, greets this master. The old man slightly bowed to Duan Lingtian. In the Tao of weapons refinement, the one that has attained the higher grade was the senior. Although in terms of age, the young man was even able to be his grandson. But in the Tao of weapons refinement, he was the junior. "Guild Master Luo, don't bother." Duan Lingtian smiled light as he was able to understand Luo Rong's feelings. Even if it was a grade 5 weapons craftsman, a grade 6 weapons craftsman still had to address the person as master. Not to mention Duan Lingtian, who was one grade higher, a grade 4 weapons craftsman. Luo Rong stood up and his gaze was extremely complicated. "May I know your name?" Luo Rong asked respectfully. "Guild Master Luo, just call me Duan Lingtian." Duan Lingtian spoke slowly. Duan Lingtian. Luo Rong's face froze as his figure shook, and even his voice slightly trembled. You're that genius disciple of the Seven-Star Sword Sect, Duan Lingtian. Seven-Star Sword Sect. Duan Lingtian shook his head and laughed in self-ridicule. The Seven-Star Sword Sect doesn't exist any longer. At most, I'm currently a disciple of a perished sect. You're really that Duan Lingtian? Luo Rong was completely dumbstruck when he obtained Duan Lingtian's confirmation. He never imagined that this grade 4 weapons craftsman was actually the Seven-Star Sword Sect genius disciple whose name was spread and gave rise to much discussion in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. The existence that was publicly acknowledged to transcend the 5 great young masters. Looks like the rumors weren't false. 5 great young masters. They're utterly incapable of comparing with him. Luo Rong gasped in his heart. As far as he was concerned, the 5 great young masters were entirely not on the same level as Duan Lingtian. Moreover, not to mention Duan Lingtian's monstrous natural talent in the martial Dao, even Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the Dao of weapons refinement caused him to feel deeply ashamed. During his life, he'd studied the Dao of weapons refinement for a few tens of years, but until today, he was still only a grade 6 weapons craftsman. He suddenly felt that he'd wasted living all these years. Could it be that the identity of Duan Lingtian is worth to be faked? Duan Lingtian was speechless when he saw the old man's dumbstruck expression. Luo Rong was slightly embarrassed, then he said, "Don't be angry, master, I was just slightly surprised." "Alright, Guild Master Luo, don't call me master in the future, calling me Duan Lingtian is enough." Duan Lingtian waved his hand and said, "Luo Rong doesn't deserve it." Luo Rong had a fearful expression when he heard Duan Lingtian. As the Guild Master of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Weapons Craftsman Guild's leader, Luo Rong's infatuation to the Dao of weapons refinement was something that was difficult for an ordinary person to imagine. In his eyes, the Dao of weapons refinement was extremely sacred. A grade 4 weapons craftsman was worthy of him extending the highest respect. Duan Lingtian didn't say anything further when he saw Luo Rong insisting on sticking to it. "Master, did you need something from me?" Luo Rong asked. He believed that it was quite unlikely that a grade 4 weapons craftsman would come look for him if the person didn't need something. "Guild Master Luo, I'll get straight to the point. I came here today mainly because I wanted to get some materials from Guild Master Luo." Duan Lingtian declared his intentions. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian declared a few materials, and they were all core materials used for refining grade 4 spirit weapons. These materials were sufficient to advance the grade 5 spirit swords in his and the little gold mouse's possession into grade 4 spirit swords. At that time, the strength of himself and the little gold mouse would acquire a great improvement. "These materials, Master, you intend to refine a grade 4 spirit weapon?" Luo Rong's gaze lit up and even his breathing became hurried. "Yes." Duan Lingtian nodded. "Master." Luo Rong's face flushed red as he looked at Duan Lingtian yet hesitated to speak. Duan Lingtian said, "So long as you find these materials that I require, I can allow you to personally observe when I refine the grade 4 spirit weapon. Not only that, I can even guide you, and allow you to become a grade 5 weapons craftsman within a year." Earlier, when Luo Rong's formidable spiritual force flashed over, Duan Lingtian had sensed a trace of faint aura within Luo Rong's spiritual force. That trace of aura was precisely related to a weapons craftsman. He clearly sensed from that trace of aura that Luo Rong had already found his way to the door towards the grade 5 weapons craftsman, but he was unable to break through for so long because he didn't have anyone to guide him. "Master, is what you said true?" Luo Rong's breathing became hurried, his chest rising and falling like a bellows, and it couldn't calm down for a long time. "I'll be back after a month, I hope that you've already prepared it by then." Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the excited Luo Rong, then turned and left, and only leaving behind the view of his back to Luo Rong. Luo Rong's feelings gradually calmed down after Duan Lingtian's figure vanished before his eyes, and after a short moment, he left hastily to go prepare. He only had a month of time, and he knew that this was his opportunity that he couldn't let slip. If it was any other person that said they were able to allow him to become a grade 5 weapons craftsman within a year, he wouldn't believe the person, even if he was beaten to death. But Duan Lingtian was different. Not to mention Duan Lingtian was a grade 4 weapons craftsman himself. Just Duan Lingtian being able to possess such high attainments in the Dao of weapons refinement at such a young age was sufficient to make him deeply believe Duan Lingtian's words. So during this month, even if he had to exert his utmost strength, he he would still gather all those materials for Duan Lingtian. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian had already left the Weapons Craftsman Guild. He naturally didn't know of Luo Rong's loss of composure after he left. Squeak squeak, the little gold mouse stood on Duan Lingtian's shoulder and cried out twice. Big brother Lingtian, will that geezer be able to gather the materials you want within a month? Don't worry. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly when he heard the little gold mouse's voice transmission. As long as he wants to break through to become a grade 5 weapons craftsman, then he will prepare all those materials on time. This is his chance, and he won't let it slip by. The little gold mouse nodded, seeming to not fully understand. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian and the little gold mouse walked into the biggest trade market at the center of the Imperial City. As the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City's biggest trade market, how bustling it was beyond Duan Lingtian's imagination. At the trade market, carriages formed dragons that flowed without end. Duan Lingtian went to a few medicinal stores and finally bought most of the medicinal materials, and he only lacked a core material. Although that jadewave grass can't be considered to be extremely rare, it's extremely difficult to come by. Perhaps I have to go to a large medicinal store to buy it. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Then he continued to go up and down the trade market. After half an hour, he found a large medicinal store that he was looking for. No matter if it was the space it occupied or the level of floors it possessed, the scale of this large medicinal store was a few times larger than a small medicinal store. Customer, may I know what you need? Duan Lingtian had only just walked into the medicinal store's door when an attendant came over to greet him. Do you have jadewave grass here? Duan Lingtian asked. The attendant's gaze lit up when he heard Duan Lingtian, and he confirmed a step further. Sir, you want a jadewave grass? Jadewave grass was the main medicinal material needed to refine a void condensing pill. One jadewave grass was sufficient to refine 100 void condensing pills. Whereas a void condensing pill was something a void prying stage martial artist required to cultivate, and this also caused the price of jadewave grass to be on the high side. Merely a single jadewave grass was worth 10 million gold. Yes, do you have one in your store? Duan Lingtian asked again. Customer, your luck is good, there just happens to be one jadewave grass remaining in our store. The attendant revealed a brilliant smile as he brought Duan Lingtian upstairs. He was able to obtain quite a large amount of commission from selling a jadewave grass. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian followed behind the attendant to arrive at the counter on the east side of the medicinal store's second floor. Manager Wang, this customer needs a jadewave grass, said the attendant to the old man behind the counter. The old man raised his eyes to glance at Duan Lingtian when he heard this. Customer, a jadewave grass is 10 million gold. Will you pay on the spot, or do you need us to follow you to withdraw it? The old man said this because he saw that Duan Lingtian was young and felt that Duan Lingtian ought to not have brought so much money with him. After all, a young man carrying so much money was extremely dangerous. There's no need, I'll pay right now. Duan Lingtian shook his head, and he raised his hand, intending to withdraw some gold bills. But right at this moment, I want this jadewave grass. A sonorous voice sounded out, and it was filled with overbearingness. Subsequently, a robust figure appeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes the instant Duan Lingtian frowned and turned around. 514 Chapter 515, Yin Zong's Death. This was a robust middle-aged man who wore embroidered clothes and was obviously of extraordinary birth. Fifth Master Yin, whereas the attendant by Duan Lingtian's side went pale and respectfully bowed to the middle-aged man. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian withdrew his gaze and a large stack of gold bills appeared on his hand before he counted 10 million from it. Slap! The thick stack of 10 million gold was pressed onto the counter by Duan Lingtian. Manager Wang, this is 10 million gold, please count it. Manager Wang nodded and stretched out his hand to pick up the stack of gold on the counter. Right at this moment, kid, are you dead? I've already said that I want that jadewave grass. The middle-aged man's face was extremely gloomy as he shouted in a stern voice. Duan Lingtian seemed as if he didn't hear the middle-aged man's words, and he silently looked at the old man behind the counter that was counting his gold bills. Whereas the middle-aged man seemed to not dare flare up at the old man, and he only targeted Duan Lingtian, and his eyes flickered with cold lights as he said, Kid, do you know who I am? Duan Lingtian still remained indifferent. 10 million gold, it's correct. Meanwhile, the old man behind the counter nodded, and after he put away the gold, He withdrew a spirit grass that flowed with jade lights with a raise of his hand before passing it to Duan Lingtian. It was precisely the jade wave grass. Duan Lingtian extended his hand to receive it, then put it away into his spatial ring under the middle-aged man's gaze that was filled with killing intent. "Thank you, Manager Wang." After he put away the jade wave grass, Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he thanked the old man. The old man knew why Duan Lingtian thanked him. "Everything depends on order of arrival. Since you've produced 10 million gold, this jade wave grass is naturally yours." Duan Lingtian nodded and bid his farewell to the old man. "Little brother, this person is the Yin clan's 5th master, Yin Zhang. Try your best to walk through places that are crowded after you leave here, otherwise, I'm afraid you'll lose both your wealth and life." Duan Lingtian had just walked a few steps when he received a wave of voice transmission. He was able to discern that it was Manager Wang who was warning him. "Thank you." Duan Lingtian maintained his expression as he expressed his gratitude, and then he left the medicinal store. Of course, Duan Lingtian noticed someone was following him when he left. It was precisely the robust middle-aged man. Yin clan's 5th master. Could it be the 5th uncle of that Yin Jay that I crippled 20 days ago at the Gate of Dragon and Phoenix Academy? Duan Lingtian's gaze was slightly strange. HMPH. Dare to seize my jade wave grass? It's fine as well, I'll save the 10 million gold as well. Not only that, I ought to be able to earn a sum of money. Yin Zhang silently followed behind Duan Lingtian and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Earlier, this person actually dared to disregard him. He would kill this person, seize the jade wave grass, and seize everything this person possessed. Squeak squeak, the little gold mouse's cry sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ear. "Big brother Lingtian, that fellow has followed us over. Little gold, you only noticed now." Duan Lingtian shook his head when he heard the little gold mouse's voice transmission. It seemed that although Little Gold had awakened her soul brand and comprehended a soul skill, yet her ability of utilizing spiritual force was far inferior to Duan Lingtian, who was an inscription master. "Unfortunately, although I can inscribe inscriptions that are sufficient to annihilate all void-prying stage martial artists, the materials required by those inscriptions are truly too difficult to obtain to the point that they can only be chanced upon by luck and not sought after." Duan Lingtian sighed, then thought to himself. "Otherwise, I can kill this Yin clan's 5th elder solely by relying on inscriptions." After he merged with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian's attainments in the Tao of inscriptions was extremely advanced. So long as his spiritual force fulfilled the conditions, he would be able to easily inscribe any inscription. But, the higher the grade and might of the inscriptions, the more valuable the material required were. Duan Lingtian was currently capable of inscribing many formidable offensive inscriptions, but he was unable to inscribe them because he didn't have the materials. But, although the material required by high-grade offensive inscriptions are rare, the materials required by many high-grade auxiliary inscriptions were rare, yet not impossible to obtain. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, "Perhaps I should find the time to obtain some materials, then inscribe some auxiliary inscriptions." Not long after, Duan Lingtian had left the trade market, and then he made a turn and went into a remote area. He's only just entered the remote area. Whoosh! An ear-piercing howl of the wind sounded out. It flashed from behind him like a bloodthirsty fierce beast that opened up its blood mouth to bite Duan Lingtian. Whereas at the instant the howl of the wind sounded out, Duan Lingtian seemed as if he possessed foresight, and he moved. Whirlwind, moving aside in time to cause the person who launched a sneak attack from behind to hit nothing. First level void prying stage. The person that launched the sneak attack was precisely the Yin clan's 5th master, Yin Zhang, and he was slightly surprised when he looked at the 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes in the sky above the violet-clothed young man that dodged his attack. Subsequently, his gaze descended onto the little gold mouse on the violet-clothed youth's shoulder. A bright light flashed in his mind. You're Duan Lingtian." Bright lights shot out from Yin Zhang's eyes and his tone was filled with excitement. "Truly an honor, the Yin clan's 5th master actually knows me." Duan Lingtian had a calm expression as he looked at Yin Zhang. "You know me?" Yin Zhang frowned, then he grunted. "It's surely that old goat Wang Pin that told you. That old goat really doesn't know how to mind his own business. Does he really think I don't dare do anything to him?" The Wang Ping that Yin Zhang mentioned was precisely the manager Wang at the 2nd floor of the medicinal store. "But, how could that old goat Wang Ping have known that you wouldn't listen to his advice? Ha 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 ha." As he finished speaking, Yin Zhang started laughing loudly. Duan Lingtian had a calm expression when faced with Yin Zhang, who laughed arrogantly. Are you done laughing? Duan Lingtian. Finally, Yin Zhang restrained his laughter, and a cold light appeared in his eyes as he stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian. I truly never imagined that I would encounter you under such circumstances. Looks like the heavens want to allow me to take revenge for my pitiable nephew. You crippled my nephew's arm and destroyed his life. Today, I'll take your life. Yin Zhang's ruthless words had just finished sounding out when he'd already shot out. Everywhere he passed, dust and dirt suffused up into the air. In the sky, 8,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. This Yin Zhang was obviously a 6th-level void-prying stage martial artist. Bang! Yin Zhang seemed to have transformed into a gust of wind that instantly arrived before Duan Lingtian, then his fist shot straight out as if it had transformed into a cannonball that fiercely smashed towards Duan Lingtian's head. He seemed as if he wanted to blast open Duan Lingtian's head with a single punch. At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt a wave of fierce and swift strong wind sweep over, and it brushed past him to the point his cheeks hurt. But he maintained his composure from the beginning until the end when faced with Yin Zhang's strike, and he even didn't blink his eyes. Coldness appeared on the corners of Yin Zhang's mouth, and he thought that Duan Lingtian had given up on resistance. When Yin Zhang's fist was about to collide with Duan Lingtian's head. Squeak! An ear-piercing cry tore open the sky. Subsequently, Yin Zhang saw a gold light flash out from Duan Lingtian's shoulder, and it fiercely collided with his fist that shot out. He hadn't even has the time to react when his fist was already struck by the gold light. Gotcha! Instantly, a wave of piercing sounds of bones breaking sounded out. Subsequently, he felt a wave of intense pain come from his fist, causing him to feel a heart-rending pain, and he couldn't refrain from emitting a sad and shrill cry. At the same time, a terrifying force lifted him up and sent him flying. In his dazed state, he clearly saw the gold light that was swift like a bolt of lightning transform into a cute and fluffy little gold mouse. Whereas in the sky above the little gold mouse, a lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouette bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it moved in circles. 7th level of the void-prying stage. The instant his body fell to the ground in a sorry state, Yin Zhang recovered from his shock and his face went ghastly pale. You schemed against me since long ago. You intentionally lured me here. After Yin Zhang consumed a healing medicinal pill, he struggled to stand up, and he gnashed his teeth as he stared at Duan Lingtian. What do you think? Duan Lingtian's expression still remained calm as he asked rhetorically. I never expected that I, Yin Zhang, swept past unhindered in my entire life, yet was annihilated in the hands of a little devil like you in the end, but you won't be able to be complacent for long. The Azure Forest Trisect will spare no expense in killing you. Yin Zhang seemed to have realized that he was in imminent danger, and simply let go. But he wasn't able to finish his words in the end. Because a tiny sword light had completely ended him. Squeak squeak, after the little gold mouse pierced Yin Zhang's throat with a single strike, her fluffy body flashed out, using her butt to knock Yin Zhang's face and putting him to the ground. Subsequently, the little gold mouse plunged down and removed Yin Zhang's spatial ring in a practiced manner before sending it to Duan Lingtian and taking credit. Big brother Lingtian, I want a huge meal. I want a huge meal. In the past, during the time she followed Duan Lingtian to gain experience and tempering, she'd helped Duan Lingtian gather the spoils of the battle on countless occasions. All right, you can eat whatever you want, said Duan Lingtian generously. After he established ownership over Yin Zhang's spatial ring, Duan Lingtian noticed that there was actually 30 million gold within it. As for other things, like low-purity medicinal pills, low-grade spirit weapons, etc., they were all useless things to him. 30 million gold, the gains aren't bad. With a raise of his hand, a strand of grade 4 weapon flame blazed on Duan Lingtian's palm, then he went to a nearby restaurant to have a meal after burning Yin Zhang's corpse into nothingness. Duan Lingtian started pondering deeply as he gazed at the little gold mouse gobbling down her food. According to what that Azure Forest Trisect elder said, besides him, only Tang Huo and Zhao Ming have come from the Azure Forest Trisect to the Imperial City this time. Duan Lingtian frowned. Who is that 9th-level void-prying stage martial artist? Duan Lingtian still remembered that when he'd just left the Dragon and Phoenix Academy today, besides noticing the Azure Forest Trisect elder, he also noticed another person. That person was a 9th-level void-prying stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian thought for a long time, yet couldn't wrap his head around it. He simply didn't continue thinking and brought the little gold mouse to return to the academy after they ate their fill. Duan Lingtian had only just entered the inner hall when Duan Lingtian saw a handsome young man in red clothes standing there silently with his eyes closed as he rested his mind. Suddenly, the red-clothed young man raised his head, and his fierce gaze looked towards Duan Lingtian. "You're Duan Lingtian." The red-clothed young man's voice was filled with hostility. 515 Chapter 516, Battling Flame Young Master. "Right, I'm Duan Lingtian. Do you need anything?" Duan Lingtian nodded. At the same time, his spiritual force stretched out. At the first possible moment, Duan Lingtian noticed that this red-clothed young man was actually a second-level void-prying stage martial artist. This person looks to a little over 30, in terms of natural talent, he's even able to compare with the figures that are on the level as the 5 great young masters. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. I've seen 4 of the 5 great young masters, could it be that he's the Flame Young Master that's ranked second? Flame Young Master, Zhang Yan. The 3rd prince of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's imperial family, and the most outstanding genius in the martial Dao of the imperial family's younger generation. Duan Lingtian had once heard of him when he was wandering about. "I heard you bullied Ziyan." When the red-clothed young man mentioned Ziyan, there seemed to be slight tender affection mixed within the depths of his sharp eyes. "Flute Fairy." Duan Lingtian was stunned, then frowned. "When did I bully her? HMPH. You still dare give excuses?" The red-clothed young man's face sank, and a fierce light flickered in his eyes. "Bullying Ziyan is equal to going against me, Zhang Yan. I heard that not only have you broken through to the first level of the void-prying stage, you've even comprehended half-step advanced lightning force. I'll properly experience your great moves today. I only hope that you don't disappoint me." Zhang Yan took a step forward, and the origin energy on his body leapt up as his sharp eyes stared fixedly at Duan Lingtian. "It's really him." Duan Lingtian completely confirmed it when he heard Zhang Yan announce his name. He was able to discern that Zhang Yan had feelings towards Flute Fairy, and he was standing up for Flute Fairy now. "I've already said that I didn't bully her. As for the incident the other day, it was she who brought it onto herself." Duan Lingtian was able to discern that although Zhang Yan was hostile towards him, it was only limited to teaching him a lesson and didn't have any malice towards him. So he explained with extreme patience. As for if Zhang Yan listened or not, that wasn't something that he could interfere. If Zhang Yan really wanted to battle, he wasn't afraid as well. This Zhang Yan is a second-level void-prying stage martial artist, and merely his origin energy is able to exert a strength of 3,000 ancient mammoths. Even if the force he comprehended is only an elementary force, his strength would still surpass mine slightly. At this instant, Duan Lingtian's thoughts revolved. But it isn't so easy if he wants to defeat me. When faced with an opponent that matched his strength, Duan Lingtian felt the blood in his body had signs of boiling. "Battle. I, Duan Lingtian, am not afraid. If you want to fight, then we'll fight. No matter what, you caused her to lose face in public. Today, I'll surely make you know not to make a mistake like this again." Sharp lights flickered within Zhang Yan's eyes as he shouted in a low voice. "Considering that you're only a first-level void-prying stage martial artist, I won't use force when I fight you today." "Won't use force?" Zhang Yan's words caused Duan Lingtian to be stunned, then he couldn't help but smile. This Zhang Yan was interesting. Perhaps, as far as Zhang Yan was concerned, he would be able to completely crush Duan Lingtian even if he didn't use force. Although the commotion between Duan Lingtian and Zhang Yan wasn't loud and didn't alarm the outer hall, the other 9 students from the inner hall heard the sounds and came out. Crazy Young Master, Sword Young Master, Ji Feng, Sima Yang, and the others were shockingly present. "It's Flame Young Master. Flame Young Master has come." Some inner hall students couldn't refrain from exclaiming in shock. A few inner hall disciples whose cultivations were at the bottom had their brows frowned tightly together, and they had an expression of perturbed and worried expression. The arrival of Flame Master also meant that one more person would be eliminated from the inner hall. Although Flame Young Master and Duan Lingtian were ready to cross swords at this moment, they didn't think that the one eliminated would be Duan Lingtian. Even if Duan Lingtian lost at the hands of Flame Young Master, and his place in the inner hall was seized, he could challenge an inner hall student again and occupy a place in the inner hall once again. Zhang Yan, a violet-colored fairy-like figure walked out from one of the courtyards, and it was a beautiful young woman. The young woman had a graceful figure, and as she stood there, her extreme charm attracted the gazes of everyone. It was precisely the Flute Fairy, Ziyan. Along with Flute Fairy walking out, Zhang Yan turned around, and the cold and indifferent expression vanished to be replaced by a warm smile. Ziyan, look as I teach Duan Lingtian a lesson for you. Zhang Yan, I don't need you to interfere in my business. Flute Fairy instead didn't appreciate the kindness and spoke indifferently. This scene caused Duan Lingtian to be astonished. After all this, it turned out that Flame Young Master was thinking wishfully. Ziyan, you're my fiancé, if I don't interfere in your business, then who will? Zhang Yan didn't get angry because of Flute Fairy treating him coldly. A smile hung on his face since the beginning until the end, and his eyes were filled with extremely gentleness and tenderness. It was as if he was spellbound as he looked at the young woman with infatuation. Who's your fiancé? Flute Fairy's voice went slightly cold. I told you long ago, don't hope that I'll agree to the marriage contract. I won't marry you even if I die. Ziyan, I'll make you fall in love with me. Flame Young Master spoke with extreme patience. You two slowly chat. Duan Lingtian yawned when he saw Flame Young Master and Flute Fairy chatting in full swing, and he intended to return to his room and rest. Don't move. But Duan Lingtian had only just taken a few steps when a figure that had transformed into wind blocked his path. At this moment, Zhang Yan didn't have the humbleness when facing Flute Fairy, and his expression was cold as if he was a different person. Duan Lingtian, I'll surely help Ziyan properly vent her anger. Zhang Yan shouted in a light voice, then he pounced at Duan Lingtian, and his swaying body was exceedingly nimble. At this instant, Duan Lingtian had a misconception. It was as if Flame Young Master had transformed into a nimble loach that caused it to be difficult for others to touch him in the slightest. Whoosh! When Flame Young Master flashed towards Duan Lingtian, 3,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form in the sky, and they dashed out in tow with imposing manners that shot into the sky like rainbows. Instantly, Flame Young Master raised his hand and pointed out, and the point tore open the sky as it stabbed towards Duan Lingtian. Swish! A material point force condensed from origin energy shot at Duan Lingtian, and it gave rise to a wave of ear-piercing howls. Finger martial skill. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised as he never expected that the martial skill Flame Young Master executed was a finger skill as well. Whirlwind. Early on before Flame Young Master had attacked, Duan Lingtian had already been ready, and now his entire body shot out accompanied by the surging of wind and thunder, dodging past Flame Young Master's attack that approached in full fury. Swish! The origin energy finger's momentum didn't slow down as it shot into the ground, and it easily pierced a bottomless little hole. But no one noticed this at this moment. The gazes of everyone seemed to have pre-discussed it and had descended onto the sky above Duan Lingtian in unison. 3,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes floated there. Duan Lingtian had broken through to the second level of the void prying stage. An inner hall student couldn't help but be greatly surprised. No, it's force. Duan Lingtian used force earlier. He's still a first-level void prying stage martial artist. An inner hall disciple that had a much more discerning eye spoke out. Force. What force is able to bestow Duan Lingtian with the strength of 1,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes? Many people were deeply puzzled. Force was divided into 3 stages. Ordinarily speaking, elementary force was able to bestow a martial artist with the strength of 200 ancient mammoths. Half-step advanced force was able to bestow a martial artist with the strength of 500 ancient mammoths. Advanced force was able to bestow a martial artist with the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. There was no force that bestowed the strength of 1,000 ancient mammoths to a martial artist. The questions of the people present was Zhang Yan's question at the same time. Duan Lingtian, I never expected that you're actually able to execute the strength of 3,000 ancient mammoths. I've really underestimated you. But I've said I won't use force, so I won't. I'll use the same strength to defeat you. As soon as Zhang Yan finished speaking, his figure swayed one more, seeming to have transformed into a slippery loach that flashed towards Duan Lingtian. Whirlwind. Duan Lingtian moved as well, and in terms of speed, he wasn't inferior to Flame Young Master. Whereas unlike Flame Young Master who only had pure origin energy beneath his feet. At the same time that Duan Lingtian flashed out, there was also force besides origin energy. This time, Duan Lingtian's force was clearly displayed before the eyes of the group of inner hall students. It's not only one type of force. The crazy young master, Luo Zan, who was spectating was the first to react, and his gaze completely focused onto Duan Lingtian's legs. Besides half-step advanced lightning force, there's still another type of half-step advanced force, wind. It's wind force. Half-step advanced wind force. After he discerned the ability that Duan Lingtian executed, Luo Zan's heart shook and a wisp of bitterness unconsciously appeared on the corners of his mouth. A first-level void-prying stage martial artist comprehending a single type of half-step advanced force was already sufficiently shocking. Duan Lingtian had instead comprehended two types of half-step advanced force. My natural talent and comprehension can be considered to be at the top in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, but until now, I haven't even comprehended half-step advanced fire force. A wisp of imperceptible bitterness flashed deep within Luo Zan's eyes. At this moment, all the inner hall students were dumbstruck as they looked at the two swift figures that flashed before their eyes. Duan Lingtian actually wasn't disadvantaged in the slightest when facing a second-level void-prying stage martial artist. Half-step advanced wind force. The old man outside the exquisite house stared blankly at the scene in the inner hall, and he was slightly absent-minded. The two types of half-step advanced force that appeared at the same time while that violet-colored figure flashed caused him to be greatly shocked in his heart. Duan Lingtian, take this. Zhang Yan lightly shouted as he pointed out his finger with a raise of his hand. Swish! The point force condensed from origin energy tore open the sky and emitted piercing howls that were deafening as it shot towards Duan Lingtian greater than. Duan Lingtian abruptly turned around, copying Zhang Yan's movement and pointed out with his finger. Tempest point. Instantly, a material finger condensed from origin energy shot out from the tip of Duan Lingtian's finger. Not only that, a strand of light violet energy and a strand of light azure energy accompanied this finger to shoot out. Half-step advanced lightning force. Half-step advanced wind force. Swish! The two-point forces condensed from origin energy collided with each other. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out as the two formidable origin energies collided with each other, then they were dispersed together in the end, transforming into nothingness. Right when the bodies of Duan Lingtian and Zhang Yan shook at the same time, and they retreated a few steps. Whoosh! At the place where the two origin energies collided, the airflow blasted out, causing a wave of strong winds that swept out towards the surroundings, and it struck the clothes of the group of inner hall students to the point they fluttered with the wind and emitted flapping sounds. But no one cared about this now. The gazes of everyone had descended onto Duan Lingtian in unison. 516 Chapter 517, Luo Rong's Shock. Perhaps, when Duan Lingtian executed his movement technique earlier, most inner hall students didn't notice his wind force. However, when Duan Lingtian pointed out that finger earlier, the wind force that twined around it was noticed by them. Besides half-step advanced lightning force, there was actually half-step advanced wind force within the finger martial skill that Duan Lingtian executed earlier. An inner hall student couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. It was like a stone that gave rise to 1,000 ripples. His words caused all the inner hall students present to recover from their shock. Duan Lingtian, sword young master, had a complicated gaze. Only now did he realize that Duan Lingtian's strength had surpassed him by so much. Abnormal as expected, Ji Feng and Sima Yang gasped. HMPH. Chai Jin's expression was gloomy, and his eyes revealed a vicious expression. He has actually comprehended two half-step advanced forces. Flute Fairy stood there, her beautiful face was slightly moved, and her watery eyes contained disbelief mixed within. Even if it was the person concerned, Zhang Yan, the flame young master who was one of the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he was now flabbergasted. Duan Lingtian's ability had exceeded his expectations. He was originally a proud person and had always refused to admit anyone was superior to him. Even if it was Crazy Young Master who was the top ranked amongst the 5 great young masters, he similarly didn't feel that he was weaker than Crazy Young Master. But now, when he was before this violet-clothed young man, he couldn't help but feel a wave of powerlessness. Let's stop here. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at Zhang Yan, then walked into the courtyard with large strides and returned to his room. This time, Zhang Yan didn't stop Duan Lingtian. After this battle, the group of inner hall students of Dragon and Phoenix Academy could be considered to have completely understood Duan Lingtian's strength. The level of monstrousness of the 7-star sword sect's genius disciple had exceeded their imagination. After a short moment, Zhang challenged an inner hall student, and that person directly admitted defeat. The remaining inner hall students gradually dispersed. The inner hall returned to calmness. Time flowed by, and dusk quickly arrived. Within an inn in the Imperial City, 2 old men were gathered together. What's going on? He Li has actually not returned. Could it be that something happened? If Duan Lingtian was here, he would surely be able to recognize that these two old men were exactly the two guardian elders of the Azure Forest Trisect. Tang Huo and Zhao Ming. Can it be that Duan Lingtian noticed him? Tang Huo's face sank. Zhao Ming's eyes flickered with cold lights as he said in a low voice. Tang Huo, we have to think of a way to capture that Duan Lingtian as soon as possible, otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be unable to refrain from killing him. Although Zhao Ming urgently wanted to obtain the 10,000-year stalactite milk, when he thought of how Duan Lingtian had destroyed his son and grandson, a wave of evil flames couldn't help but emerge within his heart. Don't worry, Elder Ming, we'll find a chance. Tang Huo's eyes flickered with cold lights as he spoke slowly. It won't be long before the Dragon and Phoenix Academy will probably give the group of students a mission to gain experience in tempering. At that time, with our Azure Forest Trisect disciples delivering us information, are you still afraid we'll be unable to find an opportunity to capture Duan Lingtian? Zhao Ming's expression eased up slightly when he heard this, yet his eyes still flickered with frightful cold lights. For a month, Duan Lingtian stayed and cultivated within the Academy's inner hall, and he didn't leave his courtyard. Whereas during this month of time, the news of him fighting to a tie with Flame Young Master, Zhang Yan, was like a gale that swept through the entire Academy, and it caused most of the Academy students to be filled with adoration towards him. 1 month later, Duan Lingtian walked out of his room and enjoyed the bath of the sun. I hope that Luo Rong has already prepared all the materials I require. Duan Lingtian's eyes were filled with anticipation. Grade 4 Spirit Sword. Just thinking about it caused him to be unable to refrain from feeling a wave of excitement in his heart. Once he successfully refined a Grade 4 Spirit Sword, he would have the confidence to make the Grade 4 Spirit Sword possess the ability to amplify his strength by 60%. What sort of a notion was 60% of strength? Take Little Gold for example. Little Gold was a 7th level void-prying stage demon beast, and she was able to exert the strength of one ancient horned dragon by merely relying on her origin energy. One ancient horned dragon was equivalent to the strength of 10,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes. If this strength was amplified by the Grade 4 Spirit Sword he refined, it would be able to provide an increase of an entire 6,000 ancient mammoths worth of strength. In other words, once Little Gold relied on the Grade 4 Spirit Sword in her possession, she would be able to exert the strength of one ancient horned dragon plus 6,000 ancient mammoths. If Little Gold utilized her advanced lightning force on top of this, her strength would be even more terrifying. At that time, she would only be the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths away from the strength of 2 ancient horned dragons. Little Gold, let's go. Duan Lingtian called the Little Gold Mouse before leaving the inner hall with her. When Duan Lingtian registered himself at the gate of the academy, Duan Lingtian specially observed for a while, and in the end, he noticed that only a 9th level void-prying stage martial artist was watching him from the shadows. Looks like it's still that person from before. Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief. He was really worried that the 2 old goats of the Azure Forest Trisect would personally come to monitor the movement at the gate of the academy. The facts proved that those 2 old goats didn't do this. Otherwise, he would really not dare leave the academy like this. After he finished registering, Duan Lingtian increased his speed, and in next to no time, he shook off that 9th level void-prying stage martial artist. HMPH. I'll properly deal with you after I refine a Grade 4 Spirit Sword for Little Gold. Duan Lingtian floated high above in the sky as he looked down at the azure-clothed middle-aged man that was looking around and seemed to be looking for something, and his face sank slightly. The azure-clothed middle-aged man searched in the vicinity before going to look at another place. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian descended from the sky and returned the place he shook off the azure-clothed middle-aged man earlier. Subsequently, he directly went to the Weapons Craftsman Guild. The Weapons Craftsman Guild's main guild was as bustling as the last time. After Duan Lingtian entered, he went towards the counter that the beautiful woman was at. The beautiful woman was registering an assignment for a weapons craftsman, and when she noticed a gaze focus onto herself, she looked over unconsciously. With just a glance, it caused her delicate figure to tremble. Finish your work first. When he saw the beautiful woman wanting to stop the registration of the weapons craftsman's assignment, Duan Lingtian sent a voice transmission to stop her. The beautiful woman nodded, and she looked at Duan Lingtian after she finished, then said via voice transmission, "Respected Lord Grade 4 Weapons Craftsman, the Guild Master has instructed that if you come, I should directly invite you over to see him." Duan Lingtian nodded. Under the lead of the beautiful woman, Duan Lingtian once again arrived at the 3rd floor of the Weapons Craftsman Guild's main guild. Lord Guild Master, the Lord Grade 4 Weapons Craftsman has arrived. The beautiful woman stood before the staircase and spoke respectfully towards inside the room. Unlike the last time, a voice didn't sound out from within this time. Whoosh! A figure that was like the wind arrived before the door and pulled open the curtain. Master, please come in. The old man that pulled open the curtain was precisely the guild master of the Weapons Craftsman Guild, Luo Rong. Presently, Luo Rong was looking respectfully and reverently at Duan Ling Tian. The beautiful woman's delicate figure trembled when she saw this scene. Even though she was mentally prepared since long ago, she had never expected that their Lord Guild Master would actually be so humble before this Lord Grade 4 Weapons Craftsman. After all, even if he met the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Emperor, their Guild Master would only nod lightly. Duan Ling Tian nodded and walked in. You can leave, Luo Rong instructed the beautiful woman before turning around and following Duan Ling Tian. Guild Master Luo, did you find the things I asked you to find? Duan Ling Tian stopped his steps and turned around to look at Luo Rong. I was fortunate enough to not fail. Luo Rong nodded, and excitement that was difficult to restrain appeared on his face. During this month, he'd practically used the entire network of relationships he possessed. In the end, he finally completely gathered all the materials 3 days ago. He still remembered how fast his heart beat at that moment. That was excitement, because, by gathering all these materials, he would be able to witness the birth of a Grade 4 spirit weapon with his own 2 eyes. This was a dream to him. Duan Ling Tian nodded, then received the materials from Luo Rong before withdrawing his own violet myrtle flexible sword. Little Gold, your sword. Duan Ling Tian looked at the little gold mouse on his shoulder. Duan Ling Tian suddenly speaking caused Luo Rong to be unable to help himself from being stunned, and his gaze descended onto the little gold mouse along with this. When Duan Ling Tian had come the last time, his spiritual force had noticed that this little gold mouse wasn't simple, and he knew that it was a demon beast. As for the little gold mouse's specific cultivation, he didn't know it. After all, he couldn't compare to Duan Ling Tian. Besides being able to use his spiritual force to detect another's cultivation, Duan Ling Tian was also able to rely on the lifetime worth of experience of the rebirth martial emperor to infer the person's cultivation. Luo Rong was completely dumbstruck when he saw a pocket-sized spirit sword appear with a raise of the little gold mouse's claw. Such a small spirit sword was something that he knew was impossible for himself to refine. Squeak squeak, the little gold mouse excitedly passed the spirit sword over to Duan Ling Tian, and her pair of jade green eyes were filled with anticipation. Master, you refined this spirit sword. Luo Rong fiercely gulped down a mouthful of saliva, and asked Duan Ling Tian with slight hesitation. Yes, Duan Ling Tian nodded, then he casually put the little gold mouse's pocket-sized spirit sword with his own violet myrtle flexible sword. Master, what grade is this spirit sword? As far as Luo Rong was concerned, even if it was only a grade 9 spirit sword, such a small spirit sword was already shocking. After all, there were very few weapons craftsmen that were able to refine such a small spirit sword. At least, even if he tried, it would be impossible for him to refine such a small grade 9 spirit sword. Grade 5 spirit sword. After Duan Ling Tian answered Luo Rong, his expression turned serious. I'm going to start refining, watch carefully. As soon as he finished speaking, a strand of blue flames blazed in Duan Ling Tian's hand. Grade 4 weapon flame. The grade 4 weapon flame was raging and restless, and in the blink of an eye, it melted the violet myrtle flexible sword and the pocket-sized spirit sword into liquid that combined together. Luo Rong took a deep breath and watched with utmost concentration. At this moment, his feeling surged extremely. Grade 5 spirit sword. That small spirit sword was actually a grade 5 spirit sword. According to the Tao of weapons refinement that I understand, even a grade 1 weapons craftsman might not be able to refine such a small grade 5 spirit sword. Where exactly did this master learn his weapons refinement technique? Luo Rong's heartbeat grew quicker and quicker. Fortunately, his cultivation was profound. Otherwise, if it was an ordinary old man, the old man would have probably been shocked to the point his heart stopped since long ago. 517 Chapter 518, Top Grade amongst the top grade. After the pile of materials Duan Ling Tian withdrew combined with the few types of materials that Luo Rong had prepared. Hiss! The grade 4 weapon flame rose explosively to melt all the materials into liquid and fuse them together. Not only that, under Duan Ling Tian's urging, the liquid formed from the melted materials fused with the material formed from the two melted spirit swords, and they slowly combined together, attempting to fuse. But the fusing of these two pools of liquids was obviously slightly difficult. How could these possible fuse together? Luo Rong frowned when he saw Duan Lingtian's actions. The scene before him was completely going against all the knowledge he had of the Tao of weapons refinement. According to his knowledge, the Tao of weapons refinement's biggest taboo was being greedy for success and rushing like this to combine the liquids formed from materials and liquids from existing spirit weapons. If it was him, and he wanted to advance a grade 7 spirit weapon to a grade 6 spirit weapon, the first step he would need to do was to melt the grade 7 spirit weapon into liquid, then try his best to remove the impurities within it. Otherwise, it would be almost impossible for the liquids formed from the spirit weapon to fuse with the liquid formed from the materials, because the impurities were too many and it would affect the fusing. However, after a short moment, Luo Rong was dumbstruck. Because he clearly saw that Duan Lingtian had really fused the two types of liquids together, and Duan Lingtian didn't remove the impurities within the grade 5 spirit sword beforehand. How could this be possible? Luo Rong revealed a shocked expression. The scene before him had completely overturned his knowledge towards the Tao of weapons refinement. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he wouldn't dare believe that someone was able to do this. Along with the passage of time, the shock on Luo Rong's face eased up. However, Luo Rong's shock hadn't even had the time to fade away when his expression flushed red. Because Duan Lingtian had already started refining now. Whoosh, 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 perhaps it was for the sake of taking care of Luo Rong, Duan Lingtian intentionally slowed down his speed of refinement. Extremely profound weapons refinement techniques came easily in Duan Lingtian's hands. But even if Duan Lingtian intentionally slowed down, Luo Rong still saw things in a blur. Miraculous, miraculous, too miraculous. At this moment, Luo Rong was almost able to hear the sounds of his heartbeat. Such a profound weapons refinement technique was something that he'd never seen or heard of. He suddenly felt when compared to the weapons refinement technique that this young man possessed, the weapons refinement technique he mastered was simply inferior to trash. Looks like the inheritance of the Tao of weapons refinement that this master has obtained isn't simple. Luo Rong thought to himself. As far as he was concerned, this young man was able to possess such ability in weapons refinement at such a young age was surely because he had a great teacher behind him. Whereas that great teacher was at least in existence that was a grade 3 weapons craftsman or above. Perhaps, the teacher of this master in the Tao of weapons refinement is from the foreign lands. When he thought up to here, Luo Rong's heart shook. The reverence in the depths of his gaze grew. Time silently flowed by. Because of having to take care of Luo Rong, Duan Lingtian intentionally slowed down. An entire 3 hours passed before Duan Lingtian split the liquid that had completely fused perfectly into one and was leaping about on his weapon flame into two pools. One of these pools was extremely small. Master wants to refine 2 grade 4 spirit swords. Luo Rong felt himself go slightly numb. It was as if anything that happened in the hands of the young man before him wasn't worth being surprised about. Refining 2 grade 4 spirit weapons at the same time. He didn't know how to describe the young man before him. Luo Rong's guess was correct. Duan Lingtian was precisely intending to refine 2 grade 4 spirit swords at the same time. One for him and one for the little gold mouse. With a raise of his hand, the 2 pools of liquids gradually compressed into form. His profound weapons crafting technique appeared once more. 1 hour later, 2 sword embryos had shown their preliminary form, and they emitted strands of fierce aura. That was the sword's sharp aura. The spirit swords haven't even been completed, yet they're already extending out such an aura. Looks like the amplification ability of the spirit swords that Master is about to refine is extremely extraordinary. As a grade 6 weapons craftsman and the guild master of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Weapons Craftsman Guild, Luo Rong naturally know the reason such phenomenon appeared. I'm afraid these 2 grade 4 spirit swords that Master is refining will be able to amplify strength by at least 59%. A grade 4 spirit sword that could provide an amplification of 59% could be considered to be top grade. Of course, this top grade was towards grade 4 spirit swords. Ordinary grade 4 spirit swords were at most able to amplify strength by 57% or 58%. Whereas grade 4 spirit swords that were at the top grade were instead able to amplify strength by 59%. Profound weapons refinement techniques came easily in Duan Lingtian's hands and continued without end. His speed grew swifter and swifter. This caused Luo Rong to be unable to refrain from smiling bitterly. Now, he was already completely unable to catch a trace of Duan Lingtian's weapons refinement technique. Of course, he knew that Duan Lingtian had to speed up now. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the sword embryo to truly take form. Another hour passed. The two sword embryos had finally taken form, and the fierce aura that was emitted from them was even more pure. After the sword embryos were formed, the follow-up refinement became easy. After an hour, Duan Lingtian successfully refined two grade 4 spirit swords. One was a dark violet-colored conventional spirit sword, the other was a dark violet pocket-sized spirit sword. Little Gold. With a raise of his hand, Duan Lingtian tossed the pocket-sized spirit sword to Little Gold and smiled. Try it. Squeak squeak. When Duan Lingtian was refining, the little gold mouse didn't dare make a noise and disturb him, and she was extremely bored since long ago. Now, when she received the pocket-sized spirit sword, she jumped for joy. Squeak. The little gold mouse emitted a sharp cry, and a lifelike ancient horned dragon appeared above her and slowly coiled downwards. The strength of one ancient horned dragon. Luo Rong's pupils constricted. Never had he imagined that this little gold mouse was actually a 7th-level void-prying stage demon beast. It was entirely impossible to discern from only outward appearance. In the next moment, his pupils that had constricted tightly hadn't even had the time to ease up when his face was covered in shock. Heaven! What had he seen? In the sky, the ancient mammoth silhouettes that appeared around the ancient horned dragon silhouette grew more and more numerous. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, when it arrived at 5,000, it still increased endlessly. In the end, the number of ancient mammoth silhouettes was fixed at 6,000. With the strength of one ancient horned dragon as the foundation, an amplification of the strength of 6,000 ancient mammoths. 60% amplification. Luo Rong had a dumbstruck expression as he muttered. He naturally knew clearly what a grade 4 spirit sword that provided an amplification of 50% meant. If it was said that a grade 4 spirit sword that provided an amplification of 59% was top grade amongst grade 4 spirit swords, then a grade 4 spirit sword that provided an amplification of 60% was top grade amongst top grade. Squeak squeak. After the little gold mouse experienced the might of the grade 4 spirit sword, her pair of jade green eyes flickered with a sheen of excitement that was difficult to fade after a long time. Not too bad. Duan Lingtian nodded and wasn't too pleasantly surprised. Refining a grade 4 spirit sword that could provide a 60% amplification wasn't surprising to him. After all, he completely followed according to the Rebirth Martial Emperor's weapons refinement technique when refining the grade 4 spirit sword earlier, and it was not much different to Rebirth Martial Emperor himself refining it. If one were to speak about a difference, then it would be that Duan Lingtian's current weapon flame was far inferior to the Rebirth Martial Emperor possessed at his peak. Rebirth Martial Emperor's weapon flame at the peak was a royal grade weapon flame. Royal grade weapon flame that was able to refine royal grade spirit weapons. Royal grade spirit weapon, I wonder how much time I must spend before being able to refine it. Duan Lingtian sighed to himself. According to the memories of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, if one wanted to condense a quasi-royal grade weapon flame and refine a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon, then one's cultivation must attain the Martial Monarch stage. The Martial Monarch stage was a stage that transcended the Void Transformation stage. Whereas if one wanted to condense a royal grade weapon flame and refine a royal grade spirit weapon, then one's cultivation must have attained the Martial Emperor stage. In other words, only after I become a Martial Emperor would I be able to condense a royal grade weapon flame and refine a royal grade spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian shook his head as he thought in his heart. By the time he became a Martial Emperor, he didn't know what year it would be. But, suddenly, seeming to have recalled something, Duan Lingtian's gaze lit up. When the Rebirth Martial Emperor's second lifetime underwent rebirth, the great treasure trove that he originally intended to leave for his third lifetime contains quite a few royal grade spirit weapons. Once I arrive at the foreign lands and follow along the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memories to take out that great treasure trove, I'll be able to obtain a royal grade spirit weapon. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian felt a wave of excitement. Royal grade spirit weapon. The strength amplified by a royal grade spirit weapon was more than double of the user's strength. After all, a grade 1 spirit weapon was already able to amplify strength by around 90%. Whereas a quasi-royal grade spirit weapon was able to amplify one's strength by 100%. Guildmaster Luo, how much did you see clearly earlier? After Duan Lingtian put away the other grade 4 spirit sword, he looked at Luo Rong and asked. But he quickly noticed that Luo Rong was in a daze. Not bad. Luo Rong was stunned on the spot, and the corners of his mouth twitched intensely as he recalled what Duan Lingtian said causally earlier in his mind. Refining a grade 4 spirit sword that provided a 60% amplification and could be called top grade amongst the top grade. It was only not bad. He even wondered if this young man said this to intentionally anger others. Guild Master Luo. Luo Rong only recovered from his shock after Duan Lingtian called out a second time, and he said fearfully, "Master, is there something you need?" Luo Rong was even more respectful when facing Duan Lingtian after witnessing Duan Lingtian's weapons refinement ability with his own 2 eyes. "It's nothing, I just wanted to ask you, how much did you see clearly of my weapons refinement technique from before?" Duan Lingtian repeated his question. Luo Rong smiled bitterly when he heard this. "Master, forgive Luo Rong for being slow-witted and was unable to follow your actions." Duan Lingtian nodded. Luo Rong's reply was within his expectations. "How about this, I'll come here once a month in the future and pass down some weapons refinement techniques to you," Duan Lingtian said to Luo Rong. Since Luo Rong had helped him gather the materials, he would naturally keep his promise and help Luo Rong become a grade 5 weapons craftsman. "Thank you, Master." Luo Rong's eyes lit up. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian spent an afternoon's worth of time guiding Luo Rong. When dusk arrived and when he saw Luo Rong was still pondering deeply, Duan Lingtian silently left the weapons craftsman main guild. "Little Gold, get ready, someone has sent himself over to offer sacrifice to your sword." After Duan Lingtian passed through a few streets, the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. He'd noticed that the 9th level void prying stage martial artist was following him again. 518 Chapter 519, Experience Mission. The azure-clothed middle-aged man looked left and right in the remote alley for a while before stepping up into the sky. "Where is he?" The azure-clothed middle-aged man frowned. "This is the 3rd time already. Could it be that he's noticed me?" Right at this moment, an awe-inspiring howl of the wind sounded out from behind him. It caused the azure-clothed middle-aged man's face to go grim, and his mind became strained. At the same time, he heard an indifferent voice sound out from behind him. "Are you looking for me?" Duan Lingtian stood in the air as he looked with a calm expression at the middle-aged man that turned around slowly, and he asked indifferently. This azure-clothed middle-aged man was precisely the 9th level void prying stage martial artist that was following him earlier. "Duan Lingtian, you really did notice me." The azure-clothed middle-aged man gasped when he saw Duan Lingtian. "Who exactly are you?" Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised that the azure-clothed middle-aged man knew him, and his gaze abruptly became fierce. "Little Gold, be ready to annihilate him at any moment." Duan Lingtian's voice transmission entered into the little gold mouse's ears in a timely manner. Squeak squeak, the little gold nodded, then raised her claws and a spirit sword that emitted a sharp aura appeared. It was precisely the grade 4 spirit sword that Duan Lingtian had refined for her. The azure-clothed middle-aged man seemed to have noticed Duan Lingtian's hostility and he said with a bitter smile, "Don't misunderstand, I'm a member of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. It's the Vice Dean that instructed me to protect you from the shadows." "A member of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy?" Duan Lingtian frowned. "Do you have proof?" With a raise of his hand, a command token had appeared. "You ought to recognize this command token, right?" Duan Lingtian looked at the command token. Duan Lingtian had a slight impression of this command token. The command token of Dragon and Phoenix Academy workers is similar to this command token. Duan Lingtian confirmed the azure-clothed middle-aged man's identity. He was a friend and not an enemy. Okay. After Duan Lingtian confirmed the azure-clothed middle-aged man's identity, he nodded before slowly descending from the sky. When he saw Duan Lingtian leaving, the azure-clothed middle-aged man followed him down. But he hadn't even followed him through a few streets before being shaken off by Duan Lingtian. "What assignment did the Vice Dean give me? This Duan Lingtian has shaken me off repeatedly, is there any meaning in following him?" The middle-aged man laughed with bitter helplessness. The night slowly arrived, and Duan Lingtian returned to the academy on time. The academy's rule was that a student had a chance to go out once a month, yet they weren't allowed to spend the night. After he returned to the inner hall and walked into his room, Duan Lingtian sat down cross-legged. He consumed a void condensing pill and started cultivating 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Lightning Worm Form. The void condensing pill that Duan Lingtian refined had a purity above 90% and it was far from something an ordinary void condensing pill could compare to. Under the assistance of the void condensing pill and relying on Duan Lingtian's natural talent that was at the limit, the speed the origin energy in his body advanced had practically arrived at an astonishing degree. The boundless origin energy ceaselessly flashed about within Duan Lingtian's body. According to this speed, it won't be long before I should be able to break through to the second level of the void prying stage. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. 3 days later, dawn, Duan Lingtian was roused from his sleep by the clamorous noise outside. Duan Lingtian heard someone calling out to him. He opened the door and walked into the courtyard, and he noticed that the person who was calling out to him was Jifeng. Is there something you need? Duan Lingtian asked. Duan Lingtian, the academy has issued missions for us to gain experience and tempering. Look, everybody has headed to the square at the center, said Jifeng. Only now did Duan Lingtian notice that none of the group of inner hall students remained, and he was only in time to see numerous figures that moved into the distance. Let's go. Duan Lingtian nodded, then brought along the little gold mouse as he followed up to the other inner hall students with Jifeng. Within Dragon and Lake Academy, besides the inner hall and outer hall occupying a vast area, the square at the center occupied an extremely vast area. Presently, many people had gathered at the square at the center. 8 inner hall students stood at the foremost of these people, and the others were all outer hall students. Unlike the inner hall students that were brimming with energy and vitality, all the outer hall students had bleak and dim expressions, and they seemed as if they were malnourished. Obviously, this was related to the food and drink they normally received. Inner hall students received fine wine and delicacies for every meal, and it could be considered to be godly enjoyment. Whereas outer hall students only had rice soup and a manto for every meal, and it was simply the difference between heaven and earth when compared with the treatment of the inner hall students. It's Duan Lingtian, someone exclaimed in surprise, causing the gazes of the group of outer hall students to shoot at Duan Lingtian, and their gazes were filled with burning admiration. Duan Lingtian was a legendary figure of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's younger generation. When before Duan Lingtian, it was difficult for them to have the heart to compare themselves with him, and there was only reverence in their hearts. Of course, a small amount of outer hall students had gloomy expressions. These people were precisely the comparatively outstanding disciples of the Azure Forest Trisect that were recommended to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. Lu Yu. Duan Lingtian's gaze was quickly attracted by a figure. The young woman before him wasn't unfamiliar to him. A long time ago, before the 7-Star Sword Sect was annihilated, and before the Azure Forest Trisect existed, he'd seen this woman at the martial competition of the 5 great sects that was held by the demonic Lotus Blade sect. The former Snow Moon sect's leader's personal disciple, Lu Yu. When Duan Lingtian looked at Lu Yu was looking at Duan Lingtian as well. Lu Yu had a complicated gaze. That day during the martial competition of the 5 great sects, Duan Lingtian had defeated Saber Young Master, Long Yun, and it caused her to feel a wave of helplessness. At that time, she'd secretly resolved that she would surely surpass Duan Lingtian one day. However, when she arrived at the academy and heard of Duan Lingtian's strength, that heart of hers that compared herself with Duan Lingtian shattered into bits. She knew that it would be difficult for her to surpass Duan Lingtian in her entire lifetime. Lu Yu, when my 7-Star Sword Sect was annihilated that day, if I'm not wrong, you and the few people beside you were there at the time and had even killed many people of my 7-Star Sword Sect. Ghastly coldness appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth, and his voice transmission pierced into Lu Yu's eardrums. He might have no impression of the other Azure Forest Trisect disciples, but Lu Yu and the few disciples by her side were all elite disciples of the Azure Forest Trisect. When they joined the fray that day, countless 7-Star Sword Sect disciples had died at their hands. A debt of blood must be repaid in blood. So long as he found an opportunity, he would absolutely not let Lu Yu and the others off. Whereas Lu Yu's face went pale when she heard Duan Lingtian's voice transmission, as she was able to discern the killing intent contained within Duan Lingtian's voice. A trace of coldness emerged in her heart for no reason. Jifeng, who saw Duan Lingtian stopping to stare at Lu Yu and had recognized Lu Yu's identity as a Azure Forest Trisect disciple, was able to sense the smell of gunpowder between the two. Suddenly, a figure appeared within Jifeng's field of vision. Duan Lingtian, Vice Dean Kai has arrived. Jifeng reminded Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian returned to his senses and nodded before heading towards the other inner hall students. He utterly didn't take Lu Yu seriously. As far as he was concerned, an Azure Forest Trisect disciple that had only stepped into the half-step void stage yet was unable to occupy a spot in the Dragon and Phoenix Academy's inner hall, was unable to be of any threat to him. When Duan Lingtian walked into the ranks of the inner hall students, he was able to notice two sharp gazes looking at him at the same time. The owners of the two gazes were respectively the Flute Fairy, Ziyan, and Flame Young Master, Zhang Yan. Duan Lingtian, I hope you don't disappoint me in the competition between geniuses 10 months from now. At that time, not only will I use force, I'll even use a spirit weapon. I'll use my entire strength to battle you. Zhang Yan's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears, and it was filled with traces of fierce hostility. I'll take you on to the end. Duan Lingtian shrugged and was indifferent. Meanwhile, the group of outer hall students saw Vice Dean Kai Ming as well, and they discussed animatedly. I wonder what sort of experience mission the Academy would issue to us. No matter what it is, I'll do my best. Supposedly, if we're able to obtain sufficient mission points, we're even able to exchange grade 6 spirit weapons, earth rank martial skills, and even high-grade medicinal pills and spirit fruits. Hee, I never considered the competition between geniuses when I came to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy in the first place. My objective is to obtain mission points and exchange it for the things I want. Yeah, there are supposedly only 5 spots for the competition between geniuses, and it isn't something we can interfere in. The group of outer hall students whispered in discussion, and it was all heard by Duan Lingtian. Mission points. Exchange grade 6 spirit weapons, earth rank martial skills, and even high-grade medicinal pills and spirit fruits. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. No wonder the various powers of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom recommended so many people to the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. So it turns out that most of the powers weren't interested in the martial competition, but this. They didn't have any thoughts towards the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. What they really cared about was that the mission points of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy was able to be exchanged for various prizes. Whereas the mission points were obtained from experience missions. There are even spirit fruits. I wonder what spirit fruits. It would be great if it's a spirit fruit that can improve spiritual force, or perhaps a spirit fruit that is able to advance the cultivation of a void-prying stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian was dreaming in his heart. Silence. Meanwhile, the Academy's Vice Dean Kai Ming had arrived before the group of students, and he shouted out in a loud voice. After the group of students went quiet, Kai Ming said, in the next half a month, all of you will leave the Academy and go complete an experience mission. Experience mission. Everyone including Duan Lingtian had held their breaths. They were all curious what sort of experience mission it would be. Kai Ming continued and said, recently, a band of formidable bandits of unknown origin have appeared in the Blackwind Ridge that's east of our Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Imperial City. Many small towns and villages surrounding Blackwind Ridge have been tormented and have been tragically plunged into misery and suffering. Your mission is to be responsible for wiping out these bandits and allow the small towns around Blackwind Ridge that survived to avoid suffering the same fate. Kai Ming finished speaking with a single breath. Bandits. Duan Lingtian's face sank slightly. When he was gaining experience and tempering himself before, what he loathed the most were bandits. Those bandits were utterly devoid of a conscience, and would frequently annihilate an entire town or village. So every time he encountered them, he would teach them a lesson. So it's bandits. Kai Ming's words caused many people to heave a sigh of relief. As far as they were concerned, how strong could mere bandits be? There was no lack of existences at the void-prying stage amongst them. Wasn't killing a few bandits extremely easy? HMPH. Kai Ming seemed to have discerned the thoughts of this group of students, and he grunted coldly. Don't look down on these bandits. According to my knowledge, there are no less than 10 existences at the void-prying stage amongst these bandits. 519 Chapter 520, Void Refining Fruit. No less than 10 bandits at the void-prying stage. As soon as Kai Ming finished speaking, no matter if it was outer hall students, or inner hall students, all the Academy's students became serious in expression. Duan Lingtian's expression became serious as well. Vice Dean Kai, since those bandits are so formidable, then why didn't out Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom directly send out the army to exterminate them? Crazy young master, Luo Zan, asked in a deep voice. Army. Kai Ming shook his head. According to my knowledge, the weakest amongst that band of bandits are existences at the nascent soul stage. Moreover, they're extremely skilled in concealment and have completely taken Blackwind Ridge to be their home. So, the army is completely unable to deal with them. Originally, His Majesty was prepared to send out experts to exterminate them, but in the end, His Majesty thought of all of you, then intended to hand over this mission to all of you. As he finished speaking, Kai Ming's gaze abruptly lit up. During this mission, besides being able to exchange for various rare and valuable items after your mission points have arrived at a certain level, due to the difficulty of the mission this time, His Majesty has prepared an additional reward for the person whose mission points are ranked number 1 during this mission. Additional reward. Kai Ming's words caused the eyes of all the void-prying stage inner hall disciples, including Duan Lingtian, to light up. Because, they had the best chance of obtaining the highest amount of points in the mission this time. After all, their strengths were the strongest. That additional reward is a void refining fruit. Void refining fruit. Kai Ming's voice had only just sounded out when the expressions of everyone was filled with shock. A void refining fruit was a spirit fruit that was extremely difficult to come by, and it was able to greatly increase the cultivation of a void-prying stage martial artist. Supposedly, once a 9th level void-prying stage martial artist that had comprehend concept consumed a void refining fruit, the martial artist would be able to break through to the void initiation stage within a short period of time. If an ordinary void-prying stage martial artist consumed it, the martial artist would at least break through a level within a short period of time, and those with good natural talent were even able to break through 2 levels within a short period of time. The eyes all the outer hall students went red with desire, but they knew that no matter how good the void refining fruit was, it wasn't something that they could have a hand in. Void refining fruit. Duan Lingtian's breathing became hurried. He never expected that the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Emperor would be so generous and give out a void refining fruit as the additional reward for the person with the highest points during the experiences mission this time. Number 1. The eyes of Crazy Young Master, Luo Zan, and Sword Young Master, Chen Xiaoshuai, were filled with yearning. Number 1, they were determined to obtain it. The first is surely mine. Flame Young Master, Zhang Yan's eyes narrowed as he clenched his fists tightly. As the third son of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Emperor, Zhang Yan naturally knew that the Imperial family had obtained a void refining fruit not too long ago. If it was any ordinary time, that void refining fruit would surely be his, but it just so happened that he'd run into the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Although the young geniuses of their Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom might not be able to kill their way into the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. But, even if they were able to smoothly advance in the Darkstone Empire, their Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom would surely obtain awards from the Darkstone Empire. It was precisely because of this that they took out the void refining fruit to become the additional reward for the first experience mission of the Dragon and Phoenix Academy. This was something that he'd known of since long ago, and he didn't blame his imperial father for it. Because he knew that his imperial father had done this all for the sake of the bigger picture. What he needed to do now was to rely on his own strength and seize first in the mission this time. In this way, he would be able to obtain the void refining fruit in a perfectly justifiable manner. Once he obtained the void refining fruit, he would be able to directly break through to the 3rd level of the void prying stage and even be able to charge towards the 4th level of the void prying stage in a short amount of time. At that time, he would perhaps be able to become eminent in Darkstone Empire, and ascend the stage of the Darken Dynasty. Just thinking about it caused him to feel a wave of excitement. Number 1, I must obtain number 1 in the mission this time. Chai Jin took a deep breath, and his eyes flickered with a grim light. His gaze imperceptibly descended onto Duan Lingtian, and it flickered with slight ruthlessness. Once I obtain that void refining fruit, my cultivation will break through in a short amount of time. At that time, I'll fully return all the humiliation that this Duan Lingtian gave me. This first is mine. Duan Lingtian didn't notice Chai Jin's gaze. At this moment, his eyes were similarly filled with yearning. So long as he obtained the void refining fruit, his cultivation would be able to swiftly advance in a short amount of time, and this had always been something he eagerly wished for. My goal now is to break through to the void initiation stage as soon as possible. At that time, I'll be able to use that jade sword, the key to the Sword Monarch's treasure, to contact the other 8 people and open the Sword Monarch's treasure together. Duan Lingtian had made a plan for his future. He had the feeling that the Sword Monarch's treasure would be a turning point for him. Presently, the martial competition of the 10 dynasties is only 4 years away. If I don't have a great fortuitous encounter during these 4 years, it would be extremely difficult for me to go against the most outstanding geniuses in the younger generation of the various dynasties. This was something that Duan Lingtian already knew. There was no need to go so far, just that big brother Zhang of his, Zhang Shouyang, had already broken through to the 4th level of the Void Initiation stage 1 year ago and had even comprehended 5th level Earth concept. If he cultivated according to routine, then not to mention 4 years, even if he was give 5 or 6 years, he might not be able to catch up to Zhang Shouyang. So he needed a turning point now, he needed a fortuitous encounter. A fortuitous encounter could be a spirit fruit, and it could be other things. Vice Dean Kai, how are the points during the mission this time counted? Duan Lingtian looked at Kai Ming and asked curiously. During the mission this time, all of you will obtain different points based on the targets you kill. Bandits below the 7th level of the nascent soul stage are worth 1 point. Bandits at the 7th level of the nascent soul stage are worth 2 points. Bandits at the 8th level of the nascent soul stage are worth 3 points. Bandits at the 9th level of the nascent soul stage are worth 5 points. Bandits at the half-step void stage are worth 8 points. Bandits at the 1st level of the void prying stage are worth 15 points. Bandits at the 2nd level of the void prying stage are worth 30 points. Bandits at the 3rd level of the void prying stage are worth 50 points. As he spoke up to here, Kai Ming stopped for a moment before continuing. Killing a bandit at the 4th level of the void prying stage or above is worth 200 points. Kai Ming's words caused all the students present to go silent, and this included the few void prying stage inner hall students including Duan Lingtian. The group of outer hall students drooped their heads and were low in spirits. They knew that the highest points in the mission this time were bound to be unrelated to them. Even if it's a bandit at the half-step void stage, it's only worth 8 points. Many people shook their heads and sighed. Vice Dean Kai, what you mean is, amongst the 10+ void prying stage bandits, there's an existence at the 4th level of the void prying stage or above. Crazy young master, Luo Zan, frowned as he asked. Kai Ming nodded. According to the intelligence we received, the leader of that group of bandits is a 4th level void prying stage martial artist. His strength is also the strongest amongst all the bandits. 4th level void prying stage. Kai Ming's words caused all the inner hall students including Duan Lingtian that were at the void prying stage to be unable to refrain from laughing bitterly. 4th level void prying stage. How would they kill the bandit? Seeming to have discerned the helpless of Duan Lingtian and the others, Kai Ming continued. If you really encounter bandits that all of you are unable to defeat on your own, all of you can choose to work together. But, once you work together, it would also mean that you will share the points equally. Share the points equally. Kai Ming's words caused the few void prying stage inner hall students to be unable to refrain from frowning. Once the points were shared equally, it would also mean that the person who joined forces with them would be on the same starting line as them. They would not have any advantage. If it isn't necessary, then I'll absolutely not join forces. All the void prying stage inner hall students including Duan Lingtian said to themselves. During the mission this time, you can choose to hunt bandits by yourself, or you can choose to form a small team with others, but, once you form a small team, the points obtained from hunting bandits will be considered as team points, and it's to be freely distributed by the members of the team. Kai Ming continued. Besides Duan Lingtian and the other void prying stage inner hall students remaining indifferent when they heard Kai Ming's words, the gazes of most people lit up. Sima, let's join forces. How about it? Ji Feng looked at Sima Yang and suggested. Split the points equally, said Sima Yang. Deal. Ji Feng didn't hesitate to agree. He and Sima Yang were both at the half-step void stage and had equal strengths, no one was taking advantage of the other. Meanwhile, many outer hall students started to form small teams. Besides that, during the mission this time, there will be someone counting your score from the shadows throughout the duration of the mission, so don't think about cheating. Also, besides spirit weapons, you're not allowed to rely on the assistance of any other external source of strength. Kai Ming added. Most people had no objections towards this. External sources of strength. Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he thought to himself. In this way, Little Gold would at most be able to execute her soul skill, Soul Shaker, to help me. After all, if she attacks directly, it would be equivalent to relying on the assistance of an external source of strength besides a spirit weapon. As for the soul skill, Soul Shake, unless it was an inscription master, otherwise, it was almost impossible for someone to sense that Little Gold had utilized her spiritual force to attack. Alright, all of you go prepare and leave after lunch at noon. After he finished speaking, Kai Ming left. Whereas Duan Lingtian, Crazy Young Master, and Sword Young Master left after him and returned to the inner hall. As for Flame Young Master, Zhang Yan, he took large strides towards the beautiful young woman, Flute Fairy. Ziyan, I'm determined to obtain that void refining fruit, forgive me for being unable to form a small team with you. Zhang Yan's words contained a slight apologetic tone mixed within. HMPH. Flute Fairy grunted lightly, and said with slight detest, even if you wanted to form a small team with me, I would be unwilling. After she finished speaking, she paid no further attention to Zhang Yan before turning around and leaving. Even if Flute Fairy's expression towards him wasn't good, Zhang Yan's face still had a smile on it, and his eyes were filled with infatuation as he looked at Flute Fairy's beautiful figure vanishing into the distance. Ziyan, one day, I'll make you fall in love with me, Zhang Yan said in his heart. You make a trip to the inn and notify the 2 guardian elders about the experience mission this time. In a corner, Lu Yu ordered. An Azure Forest Trisect disciple agreed before leaving, then headed towards the direction of the academy gate. Lu Yu's eyes gradually narrowed as a cold light flashed within. Duan Ling Tian, you're bound to die in Blackwind Ridge this time.